Chapter 87. Noticing the calmness in Ling Tian's eyes, Lan Binji's heart couldn't help but tremble. Could it be that he still has a trump card that can overturn the heavens? Thinking of this, Lan Binji couldn't help but be more cautious. Ling Tian let out a cold laugh as he thought to himself, Lan Binji, since you have forced me to this step, I have no choice but to use that move. At this moment, Ling Tian suddenly looked at Nie Tian with a weird expression. Nie Tian saw him as a strong opponent. But how could he not know Nie Tian's strength? That move was originally reserved for Nie Tian, but now it seemed that he could only use it in advance. Ling Tian suddenly kept the flaming ancient halberd and sat down cross-legged. Lan Binji looked at Ling Tian suspiciously, not knowing what the latter wanted to do. The people below the stage were also stunned for a moment. In the next moment, Ling Tian's body floated up into the air, emitting a faint glow. Layer by layer, it was as though a lotus was blooming. This is... On the stage, Zhang Yifeng stood up abruptly. Looking at Ling Tian, his expression changed greatly. Fan Jinwu and Qin Yetian looked at each other and said at the same time, Master Zhang, what happened? Zhang Yifeng was the calmest of the three. Something must have happened for him to suddenly stand up. He's a spiritual body of heaven and earth. Zhang Yifeng calmed himself down and pointed at Ling Tian. Spiritual body of heaven and earth. Fan Jinwu and Qin Yetian exclaimed at the same time. Spiritual body of heaven and earth. Of course, they knew how terrifying the spiritual bodies of heaven and earth were. When a martial artist cultivates, they mainly cultivate their martial body and origin spirit. If one wanted to possess a powerful martial body, they would have to go through a long and arduous process of cultivation. However, there was an extremely small number of people who were born with powerful martial bodies. Their physiques far surpassed ordinary martial artists. This kind of martial artist was called the spiritual body of heaven and earth. The spiritual body of heaven and earth was not only much stronger than a martial body of the same level, but the most horrifying thing was that when the spiritual body grew to a certain extent, it could stimulate the innate magical abilities. Innate supernatural powers were more suitable for a martial artist than any other martial skill. Once it was used, its power would be abnormally terrifying. A martial artist with a heaven and earth spirit body had a strong martial body, and their cultivation speed far surpassed that of an ordinary martial artist. Their martial arts achievements were usually not low. However, spiritual bodies of heaven and earth were extremely rare, less than 1 in a million. This was why Fan Jinwu and Qin Yetian were so shocked when they heard Zhang Yifeng say that Ling Tian was a spiritual body of heaven and earth. Master Zhang, can you tell what grade Ling Tian's spiritual body is? Qin Yetian seemed to have thought of something and asked with a hint of panic in his voice. The spiritual body of heaven and earth was the same as the martial arts and martial skills. It was divided into 4 grades: heaven, earth profound, yellow, low, medium, and high. Low yellow rank was the lowest rank, while high heaven rank was the highest. Zhang Yifeng narrowed his eyes and said, based on my deduction, Ling Tian's spirit body should be a low-grade yellow-grade spirit body. Low level of the yellow class. Qin Yetian let out a sigh of relief. Ling Tian's spiritual body was the lowest grade of the yellow grade, so it shouldn't pose much of a threat to Lan Binji. If his spiritual body was of a higher level, Lan Binji would be in grave danger. But even then, Qin Yetian still maintained a high degree of nervousness. If anything unexpected were to happen on the arena, he would definitely make a move. Even if Ling Tian was a spiritual body of heaven and earth, he could not be compared to Lan Binji. After all, the latter was a prince. On the arena, Ling Tian's figure rose to a height of 3 to 4 meters. His whole body was emitting a bright light. He looked like a saint descending to the world. The corner of Lan Binji's mouth curled up. He suddenly smiled and thought, Ling Tian, you are very strong. Very good. I will use your life to prove to the world how strong this prince is. Whoosh! Lan Binji stabbed out with a profound ice sword in his hand. The sword's momentum became sharper and sharper. A cold sword light whizzed out and turned into 9 sword shadows in the sky. Crack, crack, crack. An ear-piercing sound could be heard. The air seemed to have frozen. 9 ice flowers appeared in the sky and pierced towards Ling Tian like sharp arrows. Ling Tian, to be able to die under my mysterious ice 9 kills, you should be satisfied. Lan Binji smiled coldly in his heart. At this moment, Ling Tian's figure suddenly moved. Lotus Knight Destruction. He suddenly stood up and slapped down with his palm. A bright light shot out. Zhang Yifeng did not see wrongly. Ling Tian's spiritual body of heaven and earth was indeed a low-grade, yellow-grade spirit body, the Lotus spiritual body. The Lotus Knight Destruction was one of the innate abilities of the Lotus spiritual body. At this moment, everyone held their breath. They did not dare to breathe too loudly. Everyone knew that victory and defeat would be decided in the next moment. Qin Yetian's expression was tense. The spiritual energy in his body surged. He was ready to make his move. Fan Jinwu and Zhang Yifeng looked at each other, but did not say anything. On the other side, Lan Bingqian's eyes shot out a ray of light. His heart was in his throat. How he hoped to see Lan Binji die in Ling Tian's hands. Bang! In a soul-stirring moment, Lan Binji and Ling Tian's ultimate move clashed. An ear-piercing explosion was heard. In the next moment, Ling Tian's body sank. He was hit by the ice flowers and flew out 10 meters into the air. Bang! Ling Tian's body landed heavily on the ground, creating a deep pit. On the other hand, Lan Binji's face was gloomy. He stood on the stage without moving. PFFF. Ling Tian stood up. The clothes on his body were all torn apart. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that he was injured, and his injuries were extremely serious. I lost. Ling Tian spat out these few words with difficulty. He was a little absent-minded. Even with the spiritual body of heaven and earth, he still lost to Lan Binji. However, this did not mean that the spiritual lotus body was not powerful. It was just that Ling Tian's strength was too weak. He could not bring out the full potential of the spiritual lotus body. Not dead. Seeing that Ling Tian was still alive, Lan Binji's first reaction was not joy but shock and anger. Ling Tian was the primordial spirit of the blazing flame halberd. Coupled with the spiritual body of heaven and earth, his potential was limitless. If Lan Binji did not kill Ling Tian now, he would definitely be a huge threat in the future. Thinking about this, Lan Binji's face was filled with killing intent. Go to hell. Before anyone could react, Lan Binji suddenly attacked. An icicle pierced towards Ling Tian. No one expected Lan Binji to be so vicious. He actually attacked the already defeated Ling Tian. Ling Tian was currently in a daze from his defeat. His entire body was numb. How could he have any reaction? Just as the icicle was about to hit Ling Tian, an invisible force suddenly flew through the air. Bang! The icicle was shattered and turned into ice shards. Ling Tian reacted and looked at Nie Tian in shock. It was the latter who saved his life. Be *starred. You dare to save him? Lan Binji roared. He glared at Nie Tian cold. Nie Tian turned around and looked at Lan Binji. He said indifferently, Lan Binji, he is already lost. You still want to kill him. This is too much. Lan Binji was burning with anger. He shouted, This prince can do whatever I want. It is not up to you to teach me. As he said that, Lan Binji took a step forward and landed beside Nie Tian. They were less than 5 meters apart. Chapter 88. Everyone's attention shifted, subconsciously clearing out a space. No one dared to approach Nie Tian and Lan Binji. If these two were to fight, it would definitely be very intense. You dare save someone I want to kill? Lan Binji walked over step by step, getting closer and closer to Nie Tian. Nie Tian was not flustered, his expression indifferent as he said, An arrogant fool like you. If you weren't a prince, you would already be a corpse. Lan Binji was arrogant, despotic. If not for his status as a prince, he absolutely would not have lived to this day. Stinking brat, you're courting death. Lan Binji was enraged, his entire body emitting a cold intent, as if even the surrounding air was about to freeze. And yet Tian frowned slightly, saying cold, "You still want to kill people? So what if I kill people? This prince will kill whoever I want." Lan Binji roared, suddenly attacking, several ice hammers stabbing out, heading straight for Nietian. Stupid. Nietian's brows furrowed, not dodging, punching out. Pong! With an explosive sound, a golden fist shadow directly smashed the icicles. Even so, that bone-piercing cold intent was like maggots attacking along Nietian's arm. Immediately, half of his arm fell to chill, as if it was frozen. Nietian hurriedly circulated his spirit energy, shaking his arm, dispersing the cold intent. Lan Binji's black water profound ice origin spirit was too tyrannical. Just the cold intent was about to freeze Nietian's arm. If he was directly hit by the black water profound ice, Nietian would definitely become an ice sculpture. Humph! Is that all you have? Lan Binji sneered, wanting to attack again. Impudent. At this time, a roar resounded. Immediately, a vast pressure swept over. Everyone felt their chest tighten, as if they would suffocate in the next moment. Fan Jinwu stood on the high platform, his voice rumbling out, "You two stop immediately if you dare attack again. Don't blame me for being merciless. Count yourself lucky." Lan Binji turned his head to look at Fan Jinwu, then turned and retreated. After all, Fan Jinwu was Blue Tyrant Academy's vice principal. His status was very high. Lan Binji did not dare to go against his words. "Everyone disperse," Fan Jinwu shouted coldly. The crowd immediately dispersed and kept quiet out of fear. Fan Jinwu sat down and glanced at Qin Yetian. "Prince Binji has gone too far. For him to do this, does he put my Blue Tyrant Academy in his eyes?" Qin Yetian smiled awkwardly and apologized profusely. "Please calm down, Headmaster Fan. His Highness is young and insensible. Please forgive him." Fan Jinwu no longer spoke. Zhang Yifeng had a teasing smile on his face as he spoke. "Prince Binji is immature, but could it be that Governor Qin is the same? He actually made Dean Fan stand up and stop him." Lan Binji and Niet Tian fighting below the stage. This kind of thing happening in the freshman martial meet, if it were to spread out, it would inevitably damage Blue Tyrant Academy's prestige. Of course, Fan Jinwu didn't want to see such a thing. Out of respect for the royal family, he turned a blind eye. Unfortunately, Qin Yetian was blind and pretended to be dumb. He had no intention of stopping Lan Binji from causing trouble. Fan Jinwu had no choice but to stand up and stop him. Lan Binji had already broken the rules of the martial meet time and time again in the freshman martial meet. First, he forced Zhang Wan onto the stage and killed him. Then he wanted to kill the already defeated Ling Tian. Now he was fighting with Niet Tian below the stage. If he was allowed to continue messing around, Blue Tyrant Academy's dignity would be trampled until nothing was left. "It's all this Qin's fault. Please forgive me." Qin Yetian coughed twice and apologized awkwardly. Although he apologized verbally, Qin Yetian was very happy in his heart. The reason why he didn't stop Lan Binji was because he felt that offending Lan Binji for this kind of thing wasn't worth it. After all, Lan Binji was a prince and could even become the emperor in the future. Qin Yetian didn't want to leave a bad impression on him. In the martial field, Ling Tian slowly came to his senses, his eyes once again becoming firm. He looked at Niet Tian and said seriously, "You saved my life, I'll remember it." Finished speaking, he didn't stay any longer, turning to leave. Niet Tian watched Ling Tian leave, his expression becoming heavy. Just now, when he fought with Lan Binji, he already felt his opponent's power. Even Ling Tian, who had a lotus body, was defeated. Lan Binji's power was indeed terrifying. "Boss, it's really a pity." Ling Tian almost defeated Lan Binji. Jean de Bao punched his palm, feeling very regretful. To Niet Tian, the biggest threat was Lan Binji. Niet Tian shook his head slightly, saying, "There's nothing to feel sorry about. If Ling Tian really defeated Lan Binji, that would be terrible." Jean de Bao was taken aback, wondering if Niet Tian had said something wrong. Ling Tian defeating Lan Binji, wasn't it good? Yet Tian didn't explain. He knew in his heart that if Ling Tian really defeated Lan Binji, his ending would definitely be worse than now. It was very likely that he would die. Nye Tian saw very clearly that the moment Lan Binji and Ling Tian clashed, Qin Yetian on the stage had already made his preparations. If Lan Binji was defeated, Qin Yetian would definitely make his move. If Qin Yetian made his move, would Ling Tian still be alive? This was the reason why Nye Tian's expression suddenly turned solemn. He wasn't afraid of Lan Binji, but Qin Yetian. What would happen if Qin Yetian suddenly made his move when he and Lan Binji were fighting? Qin Yetian became another layer of worry for Nye Tian. However, Lan Binji had his protection, and so did Nye Tian. The 10th spiritual meridian, the blood feather heavenly spiritual rune, the 3 seals of the war god, and the explosive yuan pill from Liang Yunlong were Nye Tian's trump cards. However, what Nye Tian didn't know was that other than Qin Yetian, Lan Binji had another layer of protection, and that was the demoness killer of the Holocaust sect, Tang Yuyu. Just now, if Lan Binji was defeated, even if Qin Yetian didn't make his move, Tang Yuyu, who was hiding in the dark, would have made his move. Therefore, no matter what, Lan Binji wouldn't lose. With Fan Jinwu's reprimand, the crowd quickly quietened down. Aion Min's figure reappeared on the arena, and he said loudly, "Next match, Nye Tian versus Qin Feng." The second match of the top 4 was also the last match, and it was exceptionally eye-catching. If Nye Tian won, he could fight with Lan Binji and fight for the newcomer king. If Qin Feng won, there would be no suspense for the newcomer king. Qin Feng was Lan Binji's man, and he definitely wouldn't snatch things from his master. Nye Tian, come up and die. Qin Feng was the first to step onto the arena, and he was abnormally arrogant as he roared with a domineering aura. So arrogant. Are you in a hurry to die? Jean de Bao looked at Qin Feng and mocked. Nye Tian also shot a glance at Qin Feng, and that gaze was like he was looking at an idiot. He leaped onto the arena and looked at Qin Feng coldly. Qin Feng had the strength of the Origin Spirit 9th level, and the dominating Sky Hammer's primordial spirit was very strong, and his attacks were ruthless enough. Looking at all aspects, Qin Feng's strength was slightly stronger than Liang Yunlong. But Nye Tian didn't think much of him at all. This match was just a warm-up for him before he faced Lan Binji. Chapter 89. You're the one courting death. Nye Tianling snickered as undisguised killing intent surfaced in his eyes. It was one thing for Lan Binji to be a little arrogant, but Qin Feng was just his dog. What was there to be arrogant about? At this moment, Nye Tian's killing intent was set. Divine War Imperial Fist. Facing Qin Feng's Sky Tyrant Hammer, Nye Tian didn't dodge. Instead, he took a step forward and the 10-meter wide stage shook. Origin energy surged around his body as his entire body flickered with a dark golden glow. This was the first stage of the 9 Extremes War God Art's Golden Sky battle armor. It allowed Nye Tian's martial body to rise to the next level, making it comparable to a low-level heaven and earth spiritual body. Bang! Nye Tian punched out and clashed with Qin Feng's Sky Tyrant Hammer. The Sky Tyrant Hammer paused in the air before being forcefully knocked away. Qin Feng took a few steps back with a trace of fear on his face. He didn't expect Nye Tian to be so strong. Even though Nye Tian had hit 50,000 Jin in the test of strength, he had used the stone tablet's sensitivity to take advantage of it. Qin Feng's Sky Tyrant Hammer belonged to the strength type elemental soul. It was inconceivable for him to be at a disadvantage when facing Nye Tian head-on. Stinking brat, I didn't expect you to be so strong. Looks like I've underestimated you. Qin Feng grabbed the Sky Tyrant Hammer with his hand, and his aura became even stronger. Nye Tianling looked at Qin Feng coldly and squeezed out a few words. My next move will take your life. Arrogant, Qin Feng roared. The Sky Tyrant Hammer suddenly emitted a scarlet glow. He took a step forward and leaped into the air. He gripped the Sky Tyrant Hammer with both hands and smashed it down. Sky Tyrant Suppression. The Sky Tyrant Hammer transformed into a giant hammer shadow that fell from the sky like a giant boulder. The powerful aura made Nietian frown slightly. But he didn't panic. His feet didn't move at all. The 10 elemental meridians in his body revolved crazily, and the 9 extremes war god art circulated to the extreme. War god Ling Tian. As the hammer descended, Nietian suddenly raised his head, and the absolute heaven slash appeared in his hand. Immediately, a sharp sword light flew towards Qin Feng's neck. Bam! The huge shadow of the hammer fell and directly smashed onto Nietian's body. The entire stage seemed to sink a bit. However, Nietian's body was abnormally strong, and he actually withstood the bombardment of the tyrant sky hammer. Pooh! At the same time, the sword light flashed past, and the sound of flesh being sliced rang out in the air. Qin Feng's neck had been pierced. While he was still in the air, the tyrant sky hammer's origin spirit suddenly disappeared. His hands subconsciously covered his neck, but he was unable to stop the blood from gushing out. Qin Feng fell from the sky, and a fountain of blood spurted from his neck. After he landed, his body twitched a few times, and then there were no more movements. Dead. After a long time, when Qin Feng lost all signs of life, everyone came to their senses and gasped. Little brother Feng. A hysterical howl sounded out, and a figure rushed out. It was Qin Yuhu. He had been watching the martial gathering competition and was deeply shocked by Nietian's strength, especially when Nietian defeated Liang Yunlong in one move. Before Qin Feng went on stage, Qin Yuhu had warned him to be careful and not to underestimate Nietian. Who would have thought that Qin Feng was too arrogant and died at the hands of Nietian? Nietian jumped down from the stage and looked coldly at the scene in front of him. Nietian, I'll kill you. Qin Yuhu suddenly turned around, and the Tiger Feng fierce sword appeared. Multiple sword shadows pierced towards Nietian. Nietian only moved slightly to the side and casually blocked Qin Yuhu's attack. He said coldly, "If you dare attack again, I'll kill you." Feeling the killing intent in Nietian's eyes, Qin Yuhu could not help but tremble. His entire body actually gave off a trembling feeling, like a sheep being stared at by a lion. He immediately calmed down and subconsciously looked at Qin Feng's corpse. Walking forward, he carried it and turned to say to Nietian, "Nietian, my Qin family definitely won't let you off." Finished talking. Qin Yuhu carried Qin Feng's corpse and left swiftly. Even after Qin Yuhu's figure completely disappeared, the crowd was still in shock, unable to react for a long time. Nietian's strength was too strong. Qin Feng, with 9th level origin spirit strength, was actually instantly killed by him in one move. This kind of strength was seriously terrifying. "Boss, you killed Qin Feng. The Qin family definitely won't take this lying down." Qin Yuhu's father is the commander of the Imperial Guards. Jean de Bao looked in the direction Qin Yuhu left in and could not help saying worriedly. Nietian said coolly, "If I didn't kill Qin Feng, would the Qin family let me off?" Qin Yetian was Lan Binji's uncle. The Qin family was naturally tied together with Lan Binji. Even if there was no Qin Feng's matter, the Qin family would definitely spare no effort to deal with Nietian too. Jean de Bao looked at Nietian's resolute and cold eyes and was struck dumb in his heart. Previously, he was still worried that Nietian would be soft-hearted. Looking at it now, his worries were unnecessary. On the viewing platform, Qin Yetian's expression was grim until it was practically dripping blood. A pair of furious eyes glared at Nietian. Although Qin Feng was not his son, he was a member of his Qin family. Nietian killing a member of the Qin family in front of everyone clearly did not place the Qin family in his sights. After a while, Qin Yetian opened his mouth cold and said, "Dean Fan, just what kind of martial art does Nietian cultivate? Why is his body so powerful?" Nietian being able to defeat Qin Feng. The main reason was that his body was strong enough to actually be able to withstand the frontal bombardment of the Tyrant Skyhammer. Otherwise, with Nietian's 4th level essence spirit strength, it was simply impossible to contend with a 9th level essence spirit martial artist. Fan Jinwu's expression was solemn, his expression becoming even darker as he shook his head and said, "I don't know either." Previously, Fan Jinwoo deduced that Nie Tian's martial art was mystic rank or even earth rank. But now, he did not dare to be certain. He faintly had a guess in his heart. Perhaps Nie Tian's martial art was a heaven rank martial art. Otherwise, it was impossible to let him contend with a 9th level essence spirit martial artist with 4th level essence spirit strength. But a heaven rank martial art, even the pinnacle sects of the 3,000 small worlds might not possess it either. Nie Tian was merely a poor brat from a small place. How could he possibly possess a heaven rank martial art? Could it be that a horrifying faction was hidden behind him? If this faction really existed, it must be horrifying beyond imagination. I must have seen wrongly. Fan Jinwoo shook his head repeatedly, forcing himself to calm down and not scare himself. If Nie Tian really had some horrifying faction behind him, why would he need to come to a small place like the Blue Cloud Empire? There was no need at all. Lan Binji looked at Nie Tian, his expression dark as he said, Nie Tian, to be able to kill Qin Feng so easily, looks like this prince has really underestimated you. But it's fine. You'll know right away. Snatching something from this prince, there's only one outcome. That is death. Nie Tian defeated Qin Feng. Next was the moment of his showdown with Lan Binji. AI Amin announced on the arena, Blue Tyrant Academy Freshman Martial Meet, Rookie King Showdown, Prince Binji, Showdown Nie Tian. When his words fell, the entire audience cheered. Everyone had been looking forward to this showdown for a long time. Be careful, boss. Jean DeBeo could not help feeling worried and said to Nie Tian. Nie Yuro looked at Nie Tian and said very confidently, Big brother Fatty, don't worry. Big brother Nie Tian will definitely win. I also believe in Big brother Nie Tian. Qiu Ling nodded her head heavily. Nie Tian looked at the crowd and only smiled faintly. Then he took a step forward, his figure darting tens of meters and landing directly on the arena. At the same time, Lan Binji's figure also appeared, facing Nie Tian. Chapter 90. Everyone stared with wide, unblinking eyes at the highly anticipated final battle. On the martial arena, Lan Binji smiled darkly and said, Nie Tian, it is good that you have made it all the way to the final battle. You have not disappointed me. Is that so? Nie Tian frowned slightly and said coldly, You will be disappointed very soon, and you will despair. Lan Binji started slightly, then laughed. In the entire kingdom of blue clouds, you are the first person who dares to speak to me like this. Nie Tian shook his head slightly and didn't waste any more words. Nie Tian had seen many arrogant and despotic young masters, but this was the first time he had seen someone as arrogant as Lan Binji. Lan Binji was arrogant and egotistical. He wanted to be in the limelight, and when he farted, he wanted the entire imperial city to smell it. Die! Lan Binji screamed, and the Blackwater mystical ice appeared again. A ball of black aura flew out, trying to wrap around Nie Tian. Earlier, when they were fighting below the stage, Lan Binji hadn't been able to use it. Now that they were on the martial arena, he had no more reservations. His first attack was the Blackwater mystical ice seal. Nie Tian took a few steps back, his face calm. Lan Binji was already a Wanxiang martial artist. The Blackwater mystical ice yuan spirit was solid and extremely domineering. If one was hit head-on, one would instantly turn into an ice sculpture. Dodge? Lan Binji chuckled and roared, Can you? He reached out with both hands, and another 2 balls of black aura pressed towards Nie Tian from the left and right. Nie Tian was very calm. He suddenly took a step forward, and his body shot out like an arrow, striking out with his palm towards Lan Binji. He didn't dodge, choosing to attack instead of defend. Lan Binji's Blackwater mystical ice could freely switch between the black mist and the black ice sword. If he dodged, he would definitely be hit. Rather than dodge, it was better to attack first. Lan Binji was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Nie Tian to attack first, but he reacted very quickly. He put his hands together, and an ice shield appeared in front of him. Bam! He struck out with his palm, and the ice shield instantly shattered. Lan Binji took a few steps back and steadied himself. Nie Tian, on the other hand, felt his palms stiffen, and hurriedly circulated his origin energy to dispel the chill. Even so, his palms still felt a little numb, and it only dissipated after a long time. The black water mysterious ice yuan spirit was too terrifying. It was just a moment of contact, but the bone-chilling cold was unbearable for Nie Tian. Only now did he realize that it wasn't easy for Ling Tian to fight with Lan Binji for such a long time. Stinking brat, I have to admit that you're really strong. You're a worthy opponent. Lan Binji had not expected that he would be defeated by Nie Tian. This was a humiliation. On the surface, the fact that Nie Tian had repelled Lan Binji with a single palm strike gave the impression that he had the upper hand. In fact, Nie Tian knew that he was already at a disadvantage. Although Lan Binji's strength had reached the first tier of all creations, in terms of absolute power, he was not stronger than Nie Tian. In fact, he was even slightly weaker. His advantage lay in the black water, mysterious ice yuan spirit. After being repelled by Nie Tian once, Lan Binji had obviously become more cautious. The black water mysterious ice transformed into a sharp ice sword, and he held it in his hand. Black ice 9 kills. Lan Binji stabbed out with his sword, and 9 ice flowers appeared in the air, which then turned into 9 icicles that shot towards Ling Tian. Nie Tian took a few steps back, and his body was already at the edge of the arena. If he took another half step back, he would fall off the arena. Lan Binji's black ice 9 kills was very domineering, and Ling Tian had been defeated by this move. Without much time to think, Nie Tian's feet moved continuously, and he punched out at the same time. The golden shadow of his fist hit the 9 icicles. At the same time, the 9 extreme beast yuan spirit appeared and enveloped his body, directly acting as Nie Tian's yuan spirit shield. The 9 icicles were shattered, but ice shards filled the sky. Nie Tian hurriedly used the 9 extremes war god art to block them, and a dark golden glow appeared around his body. Crack, crack, crack. The ice shards smashed onto Nie Tian's body and actually formed countless ice flowers, causing the dark golden glow around his body to dim a lot. Nie Tian felt a bone-chilling coldness invading his body, as if all the meridians in his body were going to be frozen in the next moment. He frowned, and the 10th origin meridian was operating at full force, and waves of star energy gushed out. A shudder ran through Nie Tian's body as he shouted, "Break!" In the blink of an eye, countless ice shards shattered. Lan Binji was stunned for a moment, as if he was unwilling to believe the scene in front of him. Then, he laughed coldly and said, "Very good. You can actually break this prince's black ice 9 kills. You are indeed stronger than Ling Tian." The crowd was shocked, and they couldn't help but whisper to each other. So powerful. Prince Binji is so terrifying, he almost froze such a huge origin spirit. Nie Tian is also very terrifying. The coldness on the icicles is too strong. I can feel it even from 100 meters away. I wonder who will win this battle. To be honest, before Nie Tian and Lan Binji officially started fighting, most people thought that Lan Binji would win. After all, Lan Binji was a Wanxiang martial artist, while Nie Tian was only in essence spirit martial artist. The two were almost an entire realm apart. But as the battle continued, everyone thought that it was hard to tell who would win. Hidden in the crowd, Lan Bingqian's heart was in his throat. He really hoped that Nie Tian would defeat Lan Binji, or even kill him. If Lan Binji died, there would be no one to fight with him for the throne. The 3 people on the high platform were also watching very intently, especially Qin Yetian, whose face was becoming more and more gloomy. Zhang Yifeng seemed to have sensed something and smiled faintly. "Commander Qin, do you think that Prince Binji will definitely win?" Qin Yetian's face was solemn as he said, "Nie Tian's strength is far beyond what I expected. To be able to face Prince Binji's mysterious ice 9 kills head-on, his strength is even stranger than Ling Tian, who has the spiritual body of heaven and earth." Yes. Fan Jinwu nodded. Ling Tian had lost to the mysterious ice 9 kills, but Nie Tian had withstood it without being injured. From this, it could be seen that his strength was indeed stronger than Ling Tian's. Qin Yetian's expression changed slightly, and killing intent rose faintly from his body. Zhang Yifeng sensed this and frowned slightly. On the arena, the battle continued. Nie Tian and Lan Binji exchanged a few more blows, and Nie Tian was showing signs of his spirit energy running out. The most troublesome thing about fighting against Lan Binji was that he had to defend against his black water mystical ice at all times. If the black water mystical ice got close to him, just the coldness alone was unbearable. Luckily, Nie Tian had the power of the 10th Yuan Meridian, and the power of the stars seemed to have a suppressive effect on the black water mystical ice, which allowed Nie Tian to last until now. What? That's it? Lan Binji laughed mockingly and said, "This prince has just started." Although his mouth was mocking, Lan Binji was very surprised in his heart. He did not expect that Nie Tian's spirit energy was so abundant to be able to last until now. Moreover, when fighting against Nie Tian, almost every time he made a move, he had the illusion that he was being devoured. Nie Tian also had a feeling that the power of the stars had some sort of devouring attribute, which allowed him to plunder his opponent's spirit energy. This was also one of the reasons why Nie Tian could last until now. The power of the stars, the source of power. Could it be that the power of the stars can really devour spirit energy? Nie Tian thought of the voice in the Star River domain, and his heart suddenly trembled with excitement. If the power of the stars could devour spirit energy, then his future growth in strength would be even more terrifying. Nie Tian, your spirit energy is almost exhausted. This prince wants to see, how are you going to stop my black ice restriction? With a cold laugh, Lan Binji's hands suddenly formed a strange seal. Chapter 91. Lan Binji formed a hand seal, and the temperature on the stage plummeted. Faintly, it seemed as if an invisible hand had enveloped the entire arena. The bone-chilling cold caused Nie Tian to frown. He felt that the circulation of his Yuan meridians had suddenly slowed down, and even moving his body had become abnormally difficult. Is this a restrictive spiritual array? Nie Tian exclaimed as he raised his head slightly. The corner of Lan Binji's eyes narrowed, and he immediately smiled. I didn't expect you to be so knowledgeable, to actually be able to see that my profound ice restriction is a spiritual array. You're giving me more and more surprises. I almost can't bear to kill you. He laughed maniacally and mockingly. Lan Binji was certain that Nie Tian would die. The profound ice restriction was indeed a type of spiritual formation. Although it was only a rank 2 spiritual formation, in Lan Binji's hands, it was enough to trap an all-creation martial artist. Generally speaking, only a spirit array master could set up a spirit array. Spiritual array master. This was a profession that was even more honorable than alchemist and blacksmith. In the entire Blue Cloud Empire, there were only a handful of spiritual array masters. In his previous life, Nie Tian was an all-rounder in cultivation. He had dabbled in alchemy, artifact forging, and spiritual arrays. Even though he wasn't an expert in the path of spiritual arrays, he still had the attainments of a rank 8 spiritual array master. In the entire heaven realm, there were not many who could surpass him in terms of spiritual arrays. The so-called spirit formation actually utilized an exquisite distribution of origin energy that coincided with the power of the heavens and the earth to exert formidable strength. The profound ice restriction was only a tier 2 spiritual array. Nie Tian could see the array eye of the profound ice restriction with a casual glance. Everyone in the surroundings looked at the arena with fear on their faces. The profound ice restriction emitted an extremely cold intent. Layer after layer of cold chi caused the people near the stage to be unable to bear it, and they all retreated. I didn't expect this. I really didn't expect this. On the high platform, Qin Yetian was very excited. He laughed and said, So His Highness being ye really comprehended the profound ice restriction spirit formation. It seems like this commander was overthinking. At this point, he intentionally or unintentionally looked at Zhang Yifeng in a provocative manner. Zhang Yifeng frowned but didn't say anything. He did not want to see Nie Tian lose, nor did he want to see Nie Tian die. But even at this moment, Zhang Yifeng still did not lose confidence in Nie Tian. He still believed that Nie Tian was the winner of this battle. Nie Tian, do you feel that your whole body is stiff and it's hard for you to even move? Huh. This prince's profound ice restrictions. Not to mention a mere 4th-level origin spirit martial practitioner like you. Even if it were a myriad phenomenon martial practitioner, if he were to be trapped within this prince's profound ice restrictions, there would be absolutely no chance of survival for him. Lan Binji laughed maniacally, but was in no hurry to make a move. He was enjoying the sight of Nie Tian being trapped very much. Jean de Bayo, who was watching from below the stage, was sweating profusely as he gulped down a mouthful of saliva. Boss, please don't let anything happen. Jean de Bayo did not have any ideas and could only worry in his heart. Xiao Shan and Xiao Ling looked at Nie Tian anxiously as well. Only Nie Yuro had a relaxed expression on her face, as if she wasn't worried about Nie Tian at all. In Nie Yuro's heart, Nie Tian was an invincible existence under the heavens. Lan Bingqian, who was hidden in the crowd, was also drenched in cold sweat. If Lan Binji killed or defeated Nie Tian, his reputation would definitely soar. At that time, his position as crown prince might really change hands. Nie Tian was trapped within the profound ice restrictions. Every inch of muscle, every piece of bone, every blood vessel in his body seemed like they were about to be frozen solid. In order to maintain the agility of his body, he continuously circulated his essence meridians, expending his essence energy. Nie Tian, use your essence energy to resist the power of profound ice to your heart's content. This prince wants to see how much longer you can last. Lan Binji's face was filled with mockery. Victory was within his grasp. As long as Nie Tian's essence energy was depleted, he would be frozen into an ice sculpture in the next second. At that time, as long as he touched him lightly, Nie Tian would shatter into ice shards. Thinking of the scene of Nie Tian shattering into ice shards, Lan Binji could not help but laugh maniacally. Nie Tian's face was solemn. The corners of his lips curled up strangely as he thought in his heart. Looks like it's time to use the blood feather heavenly fiend soul. Originally, Nie Tian did not intend to use the blood feather heavenly fiend star soul. After all, something like an astral soul was too heaven-defying. Using it under the watchful eyes of the crowd would definitely attract the attention of those with ulterior motives. But now, he was already forced to a dead end. If he still did not use the astral soul, his chances of survival would truly be minuscule. Although Nie Tian had already seen through the formation core of the profound ice restrictions, his current strength was too weak and was completely insufficient to break the formation core. Amen? Seeing the smile on Nie Tian's lips, Lan Binji was stunned as he thought to himself, could it be that he still has a trump card? Impossible. How can a mere 4th-level origin spirit trash break the profound ice restrictions? Lan Binji calmed down and did not want to scare himself. Right at this moment, there was movement in Nie Tian's soul space. The primal chaos original coffin suddenly lit up, and the blood feather heavenly fiend star soul turned into a majestic surge of origin energy that fused into his Dantian's yuan meridians. Instantly, the surging origin energy filled his Dantian, and the originally dried-up yuan meridians were instantly filled with origin energy. Boom! Nie Tian's body trembled, and his aura skyrocketed, becoming more and more terrifying and more powerful. How is this possible? Lan Binji was stunned and subconsciously retreated a few steps. In an instant, he was intimidated by Nie Tian's powerful aura, and his heart instantly palpitated. On the high platform, Fan Jinwu, Zhang Yifeng, Qin Yetian, and the rest also sensed the abnormality and stood up one after another, their faces filled with shock. No one could have imagined that Nie Tian could still explode with such an aura at such a time, while trapped in the profound ice restrictions spirit array. It was simply inconceivable. Qin Yetian clenched his fists tightly, already prepared to deal with any abnormal situations. Qin Yetian, make your move. Let Niet Tian die in your hands. Only then can this old man be at ease. Fan Jinwu glanced at Qin Yetian, and the corners of his mouth could not help but curl up. On the arena, Lan Binji quickly reacted to the sudden change in the situation. "I'll kill you," he roared, and the profound ice sword in his hand pierced out, and a huge icicle flew towards Niet Tian. If he had known that Niet Tian had a backup plan, Lan Binji would not have been so calm, and would have made his move a long time ago. Just as the icicle was about to pierce into Niet Tian, the latter suddenly exploded. The wild aura was like a sudden clap of thunder, exploding in an instant, and an invisible force rushed towards the profound ice restriction's spirit array. The profound ice restriction was on the verge of collapsing, and the entire stage was trembling. Ai On Min, who was standing at the side, was stunned. He had never thought that the battle between the two youths would reach such a level. Bang! Niet Tian took a step, and his entire body emitted a terrifying aura. His figure leapt high into the air, and like a giant dragon, he soared into the sky. Hwah! In the next instant, the profound ice restriction spirit array could not withstand it anymore, and it suddenly shattered, and countless ice shards appeared in the air. Lan Binji's sword pierced through the air, and the profound ice restriction spirit array was broken, causing his Blackwater profound ice yuan spirit to suffer heavy injuries. His body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. After taking a few steps back, he fell on his butt. Impossible! Lan Binji was furious, and he crawled up, and with a roar, he spat out another mouthful of black blood. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that Niet Tian would actually be able to break through his profound ice restriction. Chapter 92. Niet Tian swooped down from the sky and punched out with a ferocious aura. If Lan Binji were to be hit by this punch, he would definitely be smashed into minced meat. Lan Binji's eyes flashed with despair as he recalled Niet Tian's words. "You'll be disappointed very soon, and you'll even be in despair." Lan Binji finally understood that Niet Tian had not lied to him. "How dare you?" At the critical moment, a roar came from the stage as Qin Yetian's figure shot up into the sky. A 10-meter-long thunder beast flashed past. Crack! Qin Yetian struck out with his palm, sending a bolt of purple lightning straight at Niet Tian. The purple lightning was fast, arriving in an instant. Boom! Before Niet Tian's fist could land, the purple lightning struck Niet Tian's body heavily. Uft. At the same time, Niet Tian's fist turned into a finger, and an air-piercing force shot out from his fingertip towards Lan Binji's neck. Niet Tian had expected Qin Yetian to make a move, so the victorious imperial fist was just a feint. The finger of the Eastern Emperor was the real killer move that would take Lan Binji's life. Qin Yetian's face fell as he sensed something amiss in the air. But it was too late. It was impossible for him to save Lan Binji now. Everything happened in a split second. Just as the finger of the Eastern Emperor was about to pierce through Lan Binji's neck, something happened. In that split second, a gust of wind blew across the stage, sweeping Lan Binji up. Whoosh! The finger of the Eastern Emperor brushed past Lan Binji's neck, leaving only a faint trace of blood. There's someone else in the shadows. Niet Tian instantly came to a realization. Qin Yetian, Fan Jinwu, and Zhang Yifeng reacted as well, their expressions changing. Who on earth could have hidden themselves so well that even Niet Tian hadn't detected them? Killer. Suddenly, two words appeared in Niet Tian's mind. Niet Tian's spiritual force was very strong, a total of 40 steps, comparable to a Tier 4 alchemist. There was only one kind of person who could hide his aura in front of him, and that was an assassin, and a very strong one at that. Niet Tian's guess was right. The person who attacked was a killer. It was none other than Holocaust sect's genius young lady killer, Tang Yuyu. Tang Yuyu had been hiding in the dark for a long time, waiting for this crucial moment. Since Qin Yetian wanted to kill Niet Tian, then she would just have to step in and save Lan Binji. Bang! Almost at the same time that Lan Binji was rescued, Niet Tian was struck by the purple lightning. The dark golden light that enveloped his body was instantly shattered, and his whole body was knocked dozens of meters into the air. He was like a leaf in the wind that could collapse at any time. Qin Yetian, the commander of the Imperial Guard and one of the few giant spirit realm experts in Blue Cloud City, had already condensed a giant spirit true body. The rushing thunder beast shadow that flashed behind him just now was his giant spirit true body, which was dozens of meters large. He used his giant spirit true body right from the start, obviously to kill Nyetian. Even a Tier 9 manifestation martial artist would not be able to withstand the full force attack of a giant spirit realm expert. Qin Yetian predicted that Niet Tian would definitely die, and the corner of his mouth curled up in satisfaction. Although it was a loss of poise for him to make a move now, and it would also damage the reputation of the imperial family. So what? The most important thing was to let Lan Binji live, and then let him obtain the title of newcomer king. Everyone in the arena fixed their gazes on Nietan, who was floating in midair, their eyes filled with complicated emotions. No one could have imagined that Nietian was actually so strong. If Qin Yetian did not make a move, Lan Binji would already be a corpse by now. But what was even more unexpected was that Qin Yetian actually killed Nietian in front of everyone. Even if he was the commander of the Imperial Guard, he could not be so shameless. Jean de Bayo raised his head to look at Nietian, his fists clenched so tightly that they almost bled. Qiushan and Qiulinger both looked horrified. Even Nieyuro, who had always been full of confidence in Nietian, was scared to tears. Even Nietian would not be able to withstand the full force attack of a giant spirit realm expert. Everyone was certain that Nietian would die without a doubt. Nietian's body suddenly descended. Just as he was a few meters above the ground, a strange scene appeared. Whoosh! Whoosh! His body in midair suddenly shook, and he soared into the air. A pair of black wings that were 5 to 6 meters long suddenly sprouted from his back. The black wings shook violently in the air, kicking up a cloud of dust on the ground. Nietian's body shot up into the air, and his figure froze in midair like a demon god, tyrannical and tyrannical. A pair of angry eyes glared at Qin Yetian. At this moment, the pair of black wings on his back was none other than his astral soul, the Bloodwing's heavenly fiend astral soul. At the instant when he was struck by Qin Yetian, the Golden Sky battle armor formed from the 9 Extremes War God art had blocked the majority of the attack. But even so, Nietian was still sent flying by the immense force. Luckily, he maintained his consciousness during the descent and completely activated his Bloodwing's heavenly fiend astral soul. This sudden scene caused everyone to be dumbfounded. Everyone inclined their heads to stare at Nietian, dumbfounded expressions on their faces. Lan Binji crawled up from the arena, his eyes wide open. Pointing at Nietian, he stammered incoherently. You, are you a human or a ghost? What do you think? Since the Bloodwing's heavenly fiend astral soul had already been exposed, Nietian no longer had any scruples. With a flap of his wings, a gust of wind whistled downwards. Qin Yetian immediately reacted. His silhouette flickered, and with a single hand, he pushed Lan Binji out of the arena. Boom! The gust of wind actually split the arena into 2 halves. What power! Nietian frowned. He didn't expect the might of the Bloodwing's heavenly fiend astral soul to be so monstrous. No wonder Nietian had spent a total of 10 days to inscribe the Bloodwing's heavenly fiend astral soul. Indeed, a minute of time, a minute of power. Qin Yetian stared at Nietian with a look of astonishment on his face. The power displayed by Nietian had far surpassed his imagination. He couldn't understand where that pair of black wings that exuded a boundless baleful aura had come from. Involuntarily, Qin Yetian turned to look at Fan Jinwu and Zhang Yifeng. The latter two had dumbfounded looks on their faces, and the shock they felt was even more obvious than his. Uncle, quickly kill him for me. Lan Binji crawled up from the ground as he screamed in a frenzy. Only now did Lan Binji realize that with his current strength, it was impossible for him to contend against Nietian. If he wanted to kill Nietian, he definitely needed Qin Yetian to act. Or perhaps Tang Yuyu, who was hiding in the dark, would act. However, at this moment, Nye Tian had already sensed Tang Yuyu's presence, and Nye Tian had already guessed Tang Yuyu's identity as an assassin. No matter what motive Tang Yuyu had for appearing at Tyrant Cloud Academy's freshman martial meet, it was impossible for her to appear openly. After all, the Bloodbat sect was a dirty assassin organization. At this moment, Tang Yuyu didn't leave. She was hidden in the crowd, observing everything that was happening in the arena. She was already prepared to give Nye Tian a fatal blow at the most crucial moment. Nye Tian, right? Tang Yuyu's heart trembled slightly as she muttered this name. She sneered in her heart. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too strong. If I let you live, you will definitely become a great calamity. The strength displayed by Nye Tian was too strange, and even Tang Yuyu felt fear in her heart. Chapter 93. Qin Yetian, are you deaf? I ordered you to kill him. Seeing that Qin Yetian wasn't going to make a move, Lan Binji bellowed furiously once more. He could give up on the title of Rookie King, but Nye Tian had to die. Qin Yetian reacted. He hesitated for a moment, but then he calmed down and looked at the black wings on Nye Tian's back. His heart trembled, and he immediately decided to kill him. Since he had already made his move, he couldn't hesitate any longer. He had to cut the Gordian knot. You really want to kill me? From 100 meters away, Nye Tian could feel the sharp killing intent from Qin Yetian's body. His face turned cold as he spoke angrily. A dignified commander of the Imperial Guards had actually killed a youth in front of everyone. It seemed like the face of the royal family was just a pile of dog shit. Qin Yetian was slightly startled. A poisonous light shot out from his eyes. Cold, he said, Nye Tian, you have no respect for the princes and despise the royal family. Today, I will execute you on the spot. Humph. Nye Tian's face was solemn as he shook his head and sneered. What a disrespectful prince, looking down on the royal family. If you wish to incriminate someone, you can always find a pretext. Everyone in the arena frowned when they heard this. Who would have thought that the commander of the Imperial Guards of the Blue Cloud Empire, the dignified patriarch of the Qin family, was actually a shameless person? Even Fan Jinwu and Zhang Yifeng looked at each other in shock. They were speechless at Qin Yetian's excuse. Qin Yetian, you bullshit. Jean de Bao bellowed from below, pointing at Qin Yetian and cursing. Qin Yetian glanced at him and recognized his identity, but ignored him. Jean de Bao's identity was special. He was the son of the Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce's president, Jin Mingxin. If Jean de Bao was killed, Jin Mingxin might be angered. Therefore, Qin Yetian directly ignored Jean de Bao. Qiu Shan and the others' hearts were in their throats. They didn't know what to do. At this time, even if Qiu Shan made a move, not only would he not be able to save Nye Tian, but he would also become a burden to Nye Tian. Qin Yetian, what kind of commander are you? You have no bottom line when it comes to farting. Shameless. You've lost all the face of the royal family. If you dare to kill my boss, I, Jean de Bao, will definitely not let you off. Qin Yetian ignored Jean de Bao, and Jean de Bao scolded Jean de Bao even more happily. Qin Yetian frowned slightly. Although Jean de Bao's cursing didn't hurt him, it would affect his mentality. He casually waved his hand, and a terrifying pressure rushed towards Jean de Bao. In the next moment, Jean de Bao's body went limp, and he collapsed to the ground. De Bao! Nye Tian roared. When he sensed that Jean de Bao's aura was still there and that he had only fainted, he heaved a sigh of relief. Qiu Shan hurriedly helped Jean de Bao up. Everyone stared at the sky without blinking. No one had thought that things would develop to this point. Nye Tian let out a long breath. Now that things had come to this, he had no way out. They could only fight. That's right, a battle with a giant spirit realm martial practitioner. Although he was weak now, he still had the blood feather, heavenly, baneful beast. Furthermore, he still had a tier 3 yuan burst pill in his hands. These were all his trump cards. No longer thinking about other things, Nye Tian directly swallowed the yuan burst pill. When the yuan burst pill entered his body, the aura in Nye Tian's body skyrocketed. His long hair fluttered in the air, and his gaze became increasingly strange. His pair of black eyes were vicious and ruthless, like a demon that walked out from hell. Qin Yetian, I'll fight with you. Let's see what capabilities you have to kill me. With a loud roar, Nietian felt that his essence meridians and essence spirit were both in the midst of a terrifying expansion. An intense tearing pain spread throughout his entire body. He didn't expect that the power of a Tier 3 Yuan burst pill would actually be so ferocious. Tier 3 Yuan burst pill, if an ordinary essence spirit martial artist were to consume it, they would definitely die tragically on the spot. Just that kind of power was not what an essence spirit martial artist could withstand. Luckily, Nietian had the 10th essence meridian and cultivated the 9 extreme true body art. His body was far stronger than ordinary essence spirit martial artists. Amen? 9th level essence spirit realm. Qin Yetian's figure moved, and he immediately understood. Nietian consumed the Yuan burst pill. Qin Yetian, what are you still waiting for? Quickly kill him. Lan Binji already could not wait any longer, letting out a roar from his throat. He anxiously wanted to see the moment Nietian perished and his soul perished. Qin Yetian sucked in a long breath and no longer waited. He gave a long howl. Stinking brat, this commander wants to see just what kind of strength you have to actually be so arrogant. When his voice landed, the rushing thunder beast primordial spirit appeared behind Qin Yetian. It was over 30 meters in size, its entire body emitting a purple glow, and lightning surging nonstop. This was Qin Yetian's primordial spirit, the rushing thunder beast. Qin Yetian was already a giant spirit realm expert. The rushing thunder beast's primordial spirit condensed into a giant spirit true body. That was why it was so terrifying. Giant spirit true body. This was precisely the hallmark of a giant spirit realm expert. Condensing the giant spirit true body, the power of the primordial spirit would be 100 times more tyrannical. With just a raise of a hand, it was sufficient to destroy mountains, rivers, and waterfalls. Giant spirit martial artists are indeed powerful. Looking at the rushing thunder beast's giant spirit true body, Nietian's heart trembled. He still underestimated the power of a giant spirit martial artist too much. The instant Qin Yetian's giant spirit true body appeared, everyone present felt a tyrannical pressure, making people involuntarily have an impulse to kneel down and worship. Even Fan Jinwu and Zhang Yifeng also gave sidelong glances. The power of the royalty was indeed horrifying. Zhang Yifeng wanted to help at this time, but he did not know how to help. Prepare to die. Right at this time, Qin Yetian roared angrily. Under this move, he spared no effort, determined to kill Nietian in one blow. Rushing Thunder Hand. The rushing thunder beast giant spirit true body spewed out a surge of purple lightning, turning into a large purple hand in midair, erupting with crackling thunder and lightning, rumbling towards Nietian. This move was fast, accurate, and ruthless. There was simply no way to avoid. Nietian's expression was calm. Hardening his heart, the blood feather heavenly wings on his back suddenly closed, forming a huge black sword in front of his chest. At this moment, he did not retreat, but advanced instead. Roar! The golden pole yellow heaven battle armor appeared once more, enveloping his entire body. Dark golden light flickered, and his essence energy was incomparably abundant, even closer to materialization. Is he crazy? Seeing that not only did Nietian not evade, but he even took the initiative to charge towards Qin Yetian, Fan Jinwu's expression changed greatly, revealing a look of horror. The people below were all scared silly. The power of a giant spirit expert was too terrifying, exceeding their understanding. Only one person did not have doubts, but was shocked. The corners of Tang Yuyu's mouth curled up, and he thought to himself, what terrifying battle talent. He could actually see that the closer the rushing thunder hand is, the weaker its power is. She was astonished at Niet Tian's battle talent. If she were to battle with Qin Yetian, she would also choose to retreat in order to advance. Tang Yu could see that the rushing thunder hand looked terrifying, but it had a fatal flaw. The power and might were gathered continuously after the move was released. Hence, the closer one got to the rushing thunder hand, the smaller the damage received. However, Tang Yu had the strength of a 9th-level manifestation, and he was the #1 genius assassin of the Blood Fiend sect. It was not strange that he could see through this point. How could Nie Tian, a mere 4th-level origin spirit martial artist, see through this point? There is only one reason that could explain it. Nie Tian was a peerless martial genius. Even if you can see through the rushing thunder hand's flaw, I don't believe that you can withstand this blow. Even though Nie Tian saw through this point, Tang Yu still did not believe that he could survive. Swoosh! Nie Tian's figure flew through the air, like an arrow leaving the bow, piercing towards Qin Yetian. Everyone held their breaths at the shocking scene. Many people did not dare to imagine what would happen next. In the next instant, Nie Tian's figure collided head-on with a large purple lightning hand. And the power of lightning attacked his entire body, making Nie Tian involuntarily let out a muffled groan. Chapter 94. Roar! As Qin Yetian exerted strength in his hand, the rushing thunder beast let out a roar towards the sky. Its huge body immediately went berserk, and the power of lightning became more and more obvious. Its whole body released a wild aura, as if it was an infuriated ancient beast. Nie Tian died obediently. Qin Yetian roared in his heart and sneered. Is that so? At this time, Nie Tian let out a strange laugh. In the next moment, a strange scene happened. The power of lightning on the rushing thunder palm was actually absorbed by Nie Tian, and the purple lightning palm strangely disappeared. Power of the stars, the source of power, destroy the sky, swallow the heaven and earth. Power of the stars awaken, heaven devouring soul activate. Within the soul space, within the boundary of the galaxy, a thunderous voice sounded, and Nie Tian was stunned for a moment. His previous guess was right. The power of the stars could indeed swallow essence power. Heaven-devouring soul. Nie Tian was ecstatic. Power of the stars, destroy the sky, swallow the heaven and earth. It could even swallow the heaven and earth, let alone the power of lightning. After absorbing the lightning power, Nie Tian instantly became even wilder. The golden sky battle armor once again appeared around him. The dark golden aura seemed to have been infused with some kind of lightning power, causing it to release purple lightning bolts, which made it look very creepy. The sudden scene made Qin Yetian stunned, and he found it hard to accept. At this time, even he started to suspect that Nie Tian was not a human, but a ghost. After swallowing Qin Yetian's power of lightning, Nie Tian's figure became even faster, and the huge black sword formed by the blood feather heavenly fiend became even sharper, flickering with purple lightning, rushing towards Qin Yetian. Qin Yetian was after all a Jin expert, and he immediately calmed down. The rushing thunder beast's Jin true body let out a sharp roar, and immediately a purple electric net appeared, enveloping his body. Bang! The huge black sword fell, but it was as if it slashed on a thick and hard iron plate. Nie Tian's figure in the air became sluggish, unable to move even half a step forward. Stinking brat, trying to borrow my power to defeat me. Don't even think about it. Qin Yetian sneered, and with a shake of his hand, he struck out with his palm. Pung! With a loud sound, the two of them separated. Nie Tian's figure flew backward. His huge black wings shook in the air, and he immediately stabilized his body. The audience fell into a deathly silence. How is this possible? Am I seeing things? Am I really not dreaming? A moment later, everyone had the same question in their minds. Nie Tian exchanged a blow with Qin Yetian. Not only did he not die, he did not lose either. Instead, he forced Qin Yetian to defend passively. This scene was even more surreal than a dream. After a while, Fan Jinwu exclaimed in surprise, "This kid's strength is so formidable." He knew very well in his heart that even he would find it difficult to escape unscathed from Qin Yetian's attack just now. Zhang Yifeng, on the other hand, was completely dumbfounded. His entire body stiffened. Lan Binji was scared silly. He stared blankly and didn't move for a long time. Even Lan Bingchen was stunned. The power of the stars, the soul that devours the heavens, it's really abnormal. Nie Tian was also slightly shocked in his heart. He felt that his own strength was unbelievable. At this moment, he had only awakened the power of 16 stars, but he could actually absorb the full power of the giant spirit martial sovereign. If he awakened the power of 900 billion stars, wouldn't he be strong to the point of being invincible? However, Nitian also knew that the reason why he was able to display such heaven-defying strength was not only because of his astral energy, but also because of the blood feather sky fiend astral soul, the golden sky battle armor, and the third-rank Yuan explosion pill. Without the support of these three powers, even if Nie Tian had 100 lives, he wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from Qin Yetian. But now, Nie Tian was facing a fatal predicament. The blood feather heavenly fiend was slowly weakening. The blood feather heavenly fiend astral soul could only be maintained for a short period of time. After clashing head-on with Qin Yetian, the power of his astral soul rapidly weakened and was about to vanish. Once the blood feather heavenly fiend disappeared, Nie Tian would completely lose the ability to resist. Stinking brat, this general admits that your strength is very strong, but you still have to die. Furthermore, you must die. Qin Yetian practically went crazy. His killing intent became even thicker, practically gnashing his teeth as he roared. To think that he, a dignified giant spirit martial sovereign, actually could not even kill an essence spirit martial artist with a single move. This was simply a humiliation. The next move, Nie Tian must die. Rushing thunder titanic beast, heaven exterminating strike. Without waiting for a moment, Qin Yetian gave a loud roar. Chopping down with both palms, a horrifying bolt of purple lightning, carrying the power to destroy heaven and earth, chopped down from the sky. Crap! Nie Tian sucked in a breath of cold air, his expression changing drastically. He could sense that the heaven-exterminating strike was more than several times stronger than the rushing thunder hands earlier. Being struck by the heaven-exterminating strike, even steel tendons and iron bones would turn into dust. What was even more horrifying was that the heaven-exterminating strike was even more tyrannical, without the slightest bit of flaw. If forcefully resisted, it would absolutely result in one's body being torn to shreds. At this extremely critical moment, there was no time to think too much. Nie Tian revolved all the essence energy in his body, flooding it onto the gold pole heaven battle armor. At the same time, the blood feather heavenly wings folded up, wrapping around his entire body, forming an enormous black sphere, seamlessly protecting Nie Tian. Bang! With a loud bang, the gold pole heaven battle armor actually did not have the slightest bit of strength to retaliate under the heaven exterminating strike, suddenly collapsing into pieces. In the next instant, the purple lightning power once again erupted with horrifying power, striking onto the blood feather heavenly fiend. Crack, crack, crack. The blood feather heavenly fiend instantly suffered the attack, cracking inch by inch, instantly turning into fragments and dissipating in the air. Nie Tian's body appeared, all the clothes on his body directly ripped apart. The tyrannical aura caused his skin to split open one bloody wound after another. Instantly, in midair, traces of blood flew about, essence energy surging. Nie Tian was like a heavy boulder, smashing towards the ground. Qin Yetian's strength was too strong. A giant spirit martial artist was absolutely not someone a fourth-level origin spirit martial artist could contend against. Nie Tian was in midair, his body dripping with fresh blood. His injuries were extremely severe, but his consciousness was still very clear. At the same time, Tang Yu sensed that Nie Tian's aura was still present. The corners of her mouth suddenly curled up, her hand forming a thumb and middle finger, lightly flicking out. Pong! A field of black feather blades pierced through the air, attacking straight towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian, One crow featherblade is enough to take your life. Laughing lightly, Tang Yu did not linger for even a moment, confidently turning around and leaving elegantly. She was certain that Nie Tian would definitely die, so there was no need for her to stay. Also, her whereabouts had already been exposed, so it was better to leave as soon as possible. Nie Tian was in midair when he suddenly felt a sharp gust of wind assaulting him from tens of meters away, his heart instantly shuddering. The 10th origin meridian in his body felt it at this moment, and with a violent jolt, it actually caused Nie Tian's body to freeze in midair for a moment. Swoosh! In just a mere instant, the crow feather blade brushed past Nie Tian's shoulder, narrowly avoiding the vital point of his heart. Following that, Nie Tian landed heavily, directly smashing into the deep pit. Everyone present had their gazes fixed on the deep pit, not moving a muscle. Dead. Finally dead. Suddenly, Lon Binji's shrill and piercing voice rang out, wild with joy, almost going insane. Being struck head-on by Qin Yetian, his battle armor shattered, his blood-feather heavenly fiend disintegrated. Everyone was certain that Nie Tian was dead for sure. Finally dead. Qin Yetian exhaled a long breath of turbid air high up in the air. If Nie Tian still did not die, his face as the commander of the Imperial Guards would be thrown all the way to his grandma's house. Fan Jinwu let out a long sigh, finally heaving a sigh of relief in his heart. Zhang Yifeng's expression was one of shock, not daring to believe the scene before his eyes. His mental power enveloped over, and his face was instantly aghast as he cried out in terror. No, teacher is still alive. Chapter 95. Still alive? Everyone sucked in a breath of air, wishing that they could dig out their eyeballs to see the scene before them. Receiving a fatal blow from a mighty spirit martial artist, he actually did not die. Yet, Tian challenged the limits of everyone's mental endurance over and over again today. Big Brother Nie Tian. Boss. Big Brother Nie Tian. Mr. Nye. Nie Yuro, Jean DeBayo, Xiaoling Xiaoshan, and the rest looked at Nie Tian together, agitated until they were about to cry. Nie Tian stabilized his body and spat out a mouthful of dirty blood. His complexion actually improved considerably. In order to resist Qin Yetian's heaven exterminating strike, Nie Tian paid a heavy price. The golden pole yellow heaven battle armor and blood feather heavenly fiend were both shattered. The current Nie Tian was very weak, but he was still alive. Just who was it that made a move behind my back? Nie Tian became cold, his gaze roaming around the crowd. But the person who made a move, Tang Yuyu, had long disappeared. Tang Yuyu was too confident, overly confident. She was certain that Nie Tian would definitely die, so she left in advance. This is impossible. After a moment, Qin Yetian's roar sounded in the air. He could not believe the scene before him. His killing move, heaven exterminating strike, actually failed to kill an essence spirit martial artist. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. Fan Jinwu was also dumbfounded, completely unaware of what had happened. Still alive? Teacher is still alive. Only Zhang Yifeng alone was wild with joy, close to going crazy. Bang! Qin Yetian fell from the air, landing heavily on the ground, causing the ground to tremble. He walked towards Nie Tian step by step, carrying monstrous rage. His pair of eyes could spew fire. At this time, as long as he moved slightly, he could easily crush Nie Tian to death. Nie Tian's face was calm, without the slightest bit of panic. Up until this moment, he was still fearless. At some point, Nie Tian's gaze suddenly landed on Lan Bingshan. Lan Bingshan. As long as Lan Bingshan was willing to stand out at this time and stop Qin Yetian, then Nie Tian would be saved. But Lan Bingshan cowered and did not stand out. He was scared. Nie Tian's strength was too terrifying. If he survived, he might become a threat to the entire royal family. Qin Yetian's footsteps became louder and louder. He was like a god of death as he closed in on Nie Tian. Do I still have to use the 3 seals of the divine god of battle? Nie Tian did not panic. He closed his eyes and murmured in his heart, The three seals of the divine battle god was Nye Tian's final trump card. However, with his current condition, even if he were to use the three seals of the divine god of battle, he would not be able to suppress Qin Yetian. Qi Feng. At this moment, Nye Tian suddenly felt a familiar aura appear. Nye Tian suddenly opened his eyes. The distance between him and Qin Yetian was already less than 5 meters. Right at this moment, a white-clothed figure suddenly descended, blocking between Nye Tian and Qin Yetian. Dressed in spotless white robes, he was handsome and aloof. It was Qi Feng. Principal Qi. Qi Feng's sudden appearance caused the onlookers to exclaim. Everyone knew that Fan Jinwu was in charge of the freshman martial gathering this time. Why would Qi Feng suddenly appear? Principal Qi. Seeing the face in front of him, Qin Yetian's body froze. Step back, Qi Feng said indifferently. His voice was not loud, but contained an undefiable overbearingness. In the entire Blue Cloud Empire, there were only a handful of people who dared to speak to Qin Yetian in such an overbearing manner. Qi Feng's sudden appearance immediately caused a commotion. Fan Jinwu did not expect Qi Feng to appear at this moment. His heart sank, and he immediately felt that something was amiss. Qi Feng had once saved Nye Tian from Fan Jinji. His appearance this time was obviously to save Nye Tian. Fan Jinwu's expression did not look good. He wanted to say something, but he swallowed his words. Actually, logically speaking, Fan Jinwu should be the one to stop Qin Yetian. After all, Qin Yetian's current actions were trampling on the rules of Tyrant Cloud Academy, as well as the dignity of Tyrant Cloud Academy. Principal Qin Yetian looked at Qi Feng and was stunned. If facing others, Qin Yetian would not be afraid at all. But facing Qi Feng, he was very fearful. Qi Feng was one of the few powerhouses in the Blue Cloud Empire, and he was also the vice principal of Tyrant Cloud Academy. Even if the Blue Cloud Emperor saw him, he also had to be respectful. I'll say it again, step back. Qi Feng did not even look at Qin Yetian. His voice was cold, and a wave of origin energy surged out. His long robe fluttered, and his aura was imposing. Qin Yetian's expression changed rapidly. In the end, he barely squeezed out a smile and took several steps back. Facing Qi Feng, even he had no choice but to step back. Putting aside that Qin Yetian was not Qi Feng's opponent, even if he could beat Qi Feng, he absolutely would not dare to make a move. Qi Feng was a member of Tyrant Cloud Academy, and he represented Tyrant Cloud Academy. If Qin Yetian made a move against Qi Feng at this moment, it was practically announcing that the royalty in Tyrant Cloud Academy had broken off. Qin Yetian could not bear this responsibility. Qin Yetian, you are not allowed to step back. Kill Nye Tian for this prince. Suddenly, Lan Binji's figure jumped out, one finger pointing at Nye Tian, his expression vicious. Qin Yetian looked at Lan Binji, wanting to call ancestor in his heart. Lan Binji was young after all, and did not know Qi Feng's prowess, and also did not know Tyrant Cloud Academy's prowess. Qi Feng shot a glance at Lan Binji and said coolly, "With me around, who dares to kill him?" His voice was not loud, calm, and indifferent, but it gave people a domineering feeling that they could not look straight at it. Everyone's hearts trembled inexplicably, their entire bodies shuddering. Qi Feng is indeed domineering enough. Nye Tian laughed bitterly in his heart. Qi Feng was a typical person who was cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. He was callous on the surface, but he was warm and kind on the inside. However, Lan Binji still could not figure out the situation. He took a step forward and hooted, "Qi Feng, do you really want to oppose the royalty?" Qi Feng was slightly taken aback, his voice suddenly becoming icy cold. "Is Qi Feng also someone you can call?" Lan Binji felt a faint pressure, making him unable to speak another word. Qin Yetian hurriedly pulled Lan Binji back, bowed, and said, "Principal Qi, His Highness Binji is young and did not mean to offend you. Please forgive him, Principal Qi." "Prince Binji, I will not argue with you on account of your young age. If you speak rudely again next time, even if Lan Yanhai personally protects you, I will definitely take your life." Chi Feng glanced at Lan Binji again with an indifferent expression. Lan Yanhai was the name of the Blue Cloud Emperor. In the Blue Cloud Empire, there were really not many people who dared to directly call the Blue Cloud Emperor by his name in front of everyone. Chi Feng was not a narrow-minded person, but Lan Binji's arrogance and despotism was truly intolerable. Hence, Chi Feng could be tolerant of others, but he had to be harsh towards Lan Binji. Lan Binji was still in a state of shock and did not dare to speak again. Chi Feng no longer cared about Lan Binji and the others. He turned to look at Nye Tian and said, "Mr. Nye, are you all right?" His tone was calm, but it was somewhat respectful. "I won't die for the time being." Nye Tian gently patted his tattered clothes and smiled bitterly. Ever since Chi Feng appeared, although he only said a few words, every sentence and every word revealed a dignified and domineering aura, making it impossible for people to disobey. This was the deterrent power of an expert. Chapter 96. The final results of the freshman martial meet had not been announced yet, which meant that the newcomer king had not been born yet. Everyone could tell that Nye Tian's strength was far from what Lan Binji could compare to. But before the results were announced, no one dared to be sure who the newcomer king would be. At this time, everyone's eyes turned to the finals referee, Ai Onmin. Ai Onmin saw Chi Feng's solemn expression and could not help but break out in a cold sweat. He first glanced at Qin Yetian, then turned his gaze to Fan Jinwu, not knowing how to announce the results. Lan Binji was the predetermined newcomer king, but Nye Tian's strength was clearly above Lan Binji's. If not for Qin Yetian, Lan Binji would have been a corpse long ago. Ai Onmin was at a loss and did not know how to announce the results. Chi Feng was clearly on Nye Tian's side, and Fan Jinwu had already informed him that the newcomer king could only be Lan Binji and no one else. At this time, Fan Jinwu finally stood up and walked over slowly. He swept his gaze around, then nodded slightly at Chi Feng and said with a playful smile, "Dean Shi, I didn't expect you to appear too. You really surprised me." Chi Feng sneered and replied, "Fan Jinwu, you are also a member of Tyrant Cloud. As the person in charge of this recruitment, someone openly broke Tyrant Cloud's rules, but you chose to stand by and watch. What is the meaning of this?" Fan Jinwu frowned slightly and replied coldly, "I don't need you to teach me what to do. I am the person in charge of this recruitment, but you made a move at the freshman martial meet. What is the meaning of this? Do you think I am not qualified to be the person in charge?" The corners of Chi Feng's mouth curled up as if he had heard a joke. He said, "I am the vice dean of Tyrant Cloud. Someone broke Tyrant Cloud's rules, and I made a move to stop it. Is there anything wrong with that? On the other hand, you have been watching coldly from the sidelines. You have ulterior motives." Ulterior motives. Chi Feng's words were very clear. He was saying that Fan Jinwu was trying to borrow Qin Yetian's hand to kill Nye Tian. Ulterior motives? Fan Jinwu deliberately put on a shocked expression and said coldly, "Chi Feng, you better speak clearly. I, Fan Jinwu, am upright and cannot tolerate sand in my eyes. If someone maliciously slandered me, I would never let it go. What good way to sit upright?" Chi Feng shouted angrily, his face revealing unconcealable anger. He felt disgusted hearing such words from Fan Jinwu's mouth. "Fan Jinwu, since you want me to say it, I'll do as you wish." Chi Feng took a step forward and said sternly, "Qin Yetian interfering in the freshman martial meet is a provocation to Tyrant Cloud Academy. As the person in charge of this recruitment, you have not made a move and have been watching coldly from the sidelines. You simply want to borrow Qin Yetian's hand to kill Nye Tian. Do you think I don't know what you are thinking? In front of me, you'd better put away your hypocritical face." Fan Jinwu wanted to use Qin Yetian to kill Nye Tian. As soon as Chi Feng's words fell, the entire place was deathly silent. A pin drop could be heard. Everyone looked at Fan Jinwu with a strange look in their eyes, and the atmosphere suddenly became strange. As the person in charge of this recruitment, Fan Jinwu had been standing by the side and watching Lan Binji and Qin Yetian's provocations. Thinking about it carefully, it was indeed suspicious. Fan Jinwu stood on the spot, his fists clenched. He did not expect that Chi Feng would really say it. What a joke. After some time, Fan Jinwu roared angrily and said loudly, I'm a complete stranger to Nie Tian. Why do I want to kill him? Chi Feng glanced at Qiushan, not far away, and suddenly became calm all of a sudden. He said loudly, because Nie Tian is a genius. Because you can't tolerate geniuses. Back then, Big Brother Qiushan was framed by you. Do you think I don't know? Qiushan. Chi Feng finally still said this name. Qiushan stood at a place not far away from Fan Jinwu and was actually very calm at this moment. He just looked at Fan Jinwu indifferently. 25 years ago, it was precisely Fan Jinwu who destroyed his essence meridians. This enmity, this hatred, Qiushan would forever remember it. He wanted to take revenge. He wanted to take revenge immediately, but he did not. Because he knew that now was not the time for revenge yet. Fan Jinwu's strength was very formidable, and his identity was even more special. The present Qiushan did not have the capital to take revenge at all. Chi Feng, you're bullshitting. Fan Jinwu's expression suddenly changed, blue veins bulging on his face. A terrifying aura burst out from his entire body. His voice was trembling, and his entire body was also trembling. Without a doubt, this was the trembling of rage. Oh no, Dean Fan is angry. They won't fight, right? I reckon that they're really going to fight. I've long heard that Dean Shi and Dean Fan are at odds. I didn't expect that they're actually like fire and water. The two of them are both giant spirit rel powerhouses. Their primordial spirits have condensed giant spirit true bodies. If they fight, there will be a good show to watch. The crowd below discussed softly. Facing Fan Jinwu's rage, Chi Feng had a calm look. His entire body shook, similarly releasing a tyrannical aura, and he said fiercely, Fan Jinwu, if you want to fight, let's fight. Why would I be afraid of you? Both sides faced each other, not giving an inch. The atmosphere of the scene immediately became tense to the extreme. When Yetian saw the scene in front of him, he was overjoyed in his heart. Chi Feng and Fan Jinwu are going to fight to the death. There will be a good show to watch now. Yetian snuck a glance at Nie Tian and reminded Lan Benji, intentionally or otherwise. His meaning was very clear. If Chi Feng and Fan Jinwu fought, Lan Benji could totally kill Nie Tian. Yetian really didn't want to personally take action. In any case, Nie Tian was extremely weak right now. Lan Benji was more than enough to take action. Chi Feng, you slander me in public. If I continue to tolerate you, how can I still be Vice Dean Tyrant Cloud? Fan Jinwu's eyes were bloodshot, and his entire body released a sharp, killing intent. A vicious voice rumbled out from his throat. As his voice fell, Fan Jinwu's body shook, and a giant blood-red tree that was 40 to 50 meters tall appeared behind him. The flamboyant tree trunk danced in the air like blood-colored tentacles, emitting a bloody and violent aura. The giant blood-red tree was Fan Jinwu's primordial spirit, the Scarlet Blood Dragon Sandalwood. When the Scarlet Blood Dragon Sandalwood appeared, the surrounding air instantly tightened as though it was being pulled by an invisible force about to split apart at any moment. Immediately, a terrifying bloody aura spread out. Everyone felt their hearts tremble inexplicably at the same time, as though they were about to kneel and worship in the next moment. What a terrifying aura. He's actually stronger than Qin Yetian. Taking a few steps back, Nie Tian's heart sank. He didn't expect Fan Jinwu's strength to be above Qin Yetian's. Everyone retreat. Chi Feng roared. In the next moment, everyone retreated, retreating hundreds of meters away from Fan Jinwu and Chi Feng. Fan Jinwu, I'll take revenge for Big Brother Qiushan today. Chi Feng smiled coldly. His white clothes fluttered and his body shook. Immediately, terrifying essence energy surged out of his body, condensing into a giant sword behind him. It was 30 meters long and had a terrifying aura. Sword Spirit. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The giant sword was called Black Frost Moon Slash, and it was Chi Feng's primordial spirit. The giant spirit true body formed by the Black Frost Moon Slash looked even more terrifying and shocking. as though it could cut through the sky. This was the third time everyone saw the giant spirit true body today. Qin Yetian's giant spirit true body was the rushing thunder beast, which was a beast spirit. Fan Jinwu's giant spirit true body was the scarlet blood dragon sandalwood, which was a wood spirit. Qi Feng's giant spirit true body was the black frost moon slash, which was a weapon spirit. Chapter 97. Everyone looked at Qi Feng and Fan Jinwu from afar. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly, afraid of missing any exciting moments. Most people would never have the chance to see a battle between giant spirit martial artists in their lifetime. Qiushan looked at Qi Feng with a nervous expression, clearly very worried. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Qi Feng and Fan Jinwu both have second-level giant spirit strength, but Qi Feng's is a fifth-level giant spirit, while Fan Jinwu's is only a fourth-level giant spirit. Furthermore, Qi Feng is a sword spirit while Fan Jinwu is a wood spirit, so it's impossible for Fan Jinwu to be Qi Feng's match. Nie Tian was right. Although Fan Jinwu had the same strength as Qi Feng, his true combat strength was slightly inferior. A sword spirit's advantage was flexibility and powerful attack power, while a wood spirit focused on control and defense. Only by cooperating with other primordial spirits could it unleash the greatest power. In a one-on-one battle, it would be difficult to unleash the power of a wood spirit. Fan Jinwu wasn't stupid. He naturally understood his own shortcomings, so he chose to make the first move, wanting to seize the initiative. Scarlet Blood Lone Dragon Drill. Fan Jinwu roared. His figure was wild as he blasted out with his palm. Countless branches of the Scarlet Blood Dragon sandalwood twisted together, condensing into a huge drill that blasted out. Boom! There was a loud explosion in the air as the bluestone slabs on the ground were swept up. Before they even touched the Scarlet Blood Dragon sandalwood, they had already turned into powder. Everywhere the Scarlet Blood Lone Dragon drill went, a terrifying deep pit appeared in the ground. The sharp wind, violent aura, and bloody aura arrived in the blink of an eye. Fan Jinwu was determined to succeed in this attack. Everyone present felt a chill run down their spines. Everyone felt an incomparably tyrannical aura surging with a threat that made them feel despair. When Qin Yetian saw this scene, his heart couldn't help but tremble. He didn't expect Fan Jinwu's strength to be so terrifying. It was definitely above his. Still water, beheading moon. In the face of Fan Jinwu's powerful attack, Qi Feng's expression was calm. Instead of retreating, he advanced. The profound frost crescent cleaving sword tumbled through the air like a huge flood dragon, carrying a monstrous aura as it slashed down. Immediately, the surrounding 100 meters of space stagnated, and the entire space seemed to have come to a standstill. No one had expected that the first exchange between the two would be a clash of ultimate moves. Giant spirit martial artist, giant spirit true body, just this kind of earth-devouring aura was unbearable. Bang! The next moment, the Scarlet Blood Soul Dragon drill collided with the still water / moon beheader like two ancient beasts colliding together. There was an earth-shattering noise, and there was immediately a visible and terrifying wave of energy in the air, surging out from the center of the collision. Boom! Whoosh! Suddenly, dust flew up from the ground, and gravel rolled. The ground under his feet was torn apart, and a terrifying scar that was several meters deep appeared. Qi Feng and Fan Jinwu retreated at the same time. They retreated dozens of meters before stabilizing themselves. Pooh! Pooh! Almost at the same time, the two of them vomited blood. This move was too ferocious. It was a clash of elemental energy against elemental energy, an absolute confrontation of strength against strength. Both sides were equally matched. The two of them stood still at the same time and looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with extreme anger. Having come this far, the two sides were already irreconcilable. Boom! Boom! The two of them revolved their essence meridians again, the aura of their body surging. This time, the Scarlet Blood Dragon Sandalwood and the profound Frost Beheader became even more berserk, and the aura was even more astonishing. The onlookers could not help retreating one after another, discussing in low voices. Are Principal Chi and Principal Fan going to fight to the death? Looking at the aura, they really want to fight to the death. I wonder who will win. F*CK me. No way. They're our principals. Is there such a big grudge? Everyone sucked in a cold breath, looking at Chi Feng and Fan Jinwu in shock. Nie Tian also frowned slightly when he saw it. Things developing to this step was also what he did not expect. If Chi Feng and Fan Jinwu had a life-and-death battle, Chi Feng's chances of winning were more than 70%, so Nie Tian was really not too worried. Chi Feng, I didn't expect that we would come to this step. Fan Jinwu's face was ferocious as he roared. Chi Feng's expression was cold as he said in a cold voice, Fan Jinwu, prepare to pay the price for framing Big Brother Qiushan back then. The moment his voice fell, the two's aura skyrocketed again. The surrounding space was filled with a bloody and violent aura. Qiushan reaped what he sowed back then. And you, Chi Feng, deserve to die. Fan Jinwu roared again and again, his eyes bloodshot. The monstrous anger turned into endless killing intent, and the aura all over his body was cold and bloody. The crimson blood dragon, Sandalwood, shook violently like a demon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, about to tear everything apart in the next moment. Crimson blood dragon Sandalwood, death strike. A sharp roar sounded cold and sharp. This time, Fan Jinwu did not care about anything. The next moment, the crimson blood dragon Sandalwood released a scarlet lightning bolt that tore through the air, carrying a death roar as it attacked Chi Feng. Profound frost moon slash, extreme waterfall. Chi Feng also used his ultimate move. The profound frost moon slash's sword edge shone brightly, and a sharp sword intent enveloped the void for 100 meters. A terrifying sword shadow shot out and blasted at Fan Jinwu. Crimson blood dragon Sandalwood, death strike. Profound frost moon slash, extreme waterfall. Both of them used killing moves. After this move, it would determine who was superior and who lived and died. The scarlet lightning and the terrifying sword shadow shot out at top speed and were about to collide. However, at this critical moment, a sudden change occurred. Stop! An indifferent and cold voice sounded. Then, a bone-chilling aura suddenly appeared and turned into a vortex in the air. It was like the spring wind and rain, nourishing everything silently. The scarlet lightning and the terrifying sword shadow bombarded the vortex, but they were like clay oxen entering the sea, disappearing without a trace. At the same time, a graceful figure appeared in the air. Everyone looked at the figure that suddenly appeared in the air, and they were collectively petrified. What kind of figure was this? Her white clothes were spotless, and her beautiful black hair hung down to her waist. Moreover, a purple ribbon was tied around her slender waist, and it vividly displayed her extremely perfect figure. Her exquisite facial features had an extremely complicated beauty that fused purity and charm. Her ice blue eyes were like the deep sea, releasing an extremely mysterious beauty. At this moment, space and time completely stopped. Everything around them seemed to no longer exist. Countless eyes stared at the figure in the air, unwilling to look away for even half a second. The woman in the air was soul-stirring and breathtaking. She was so beautiful that she shouldn't exist. Even Ye Tian couldn't help but be stunned. For a moment, his eyes happened to meet the woman's gaze. In an instant, Nye Tian felt as if his entire body had been electrocuted, and he almost lost his mind. However, the next moment, he discovered that there was an extremely deep and cold coldness in the other party's ice-blue eyes, causing people's hearts to tremble and immediately keep a respectful distance. Cold. The woman's eyes were extremely cold, so cold that it made people shudder. Mo Rushi's coldness was a little girl's disguise, but the woman in front of him was absolutely indifferent, as if nothing was important in her eyes. Dean! After a while, Chi Feng and Fan Jinwu exclaimed at the same time, looking at the woman in the air in disbelief. Chapter 98. After a long time, Everyone heard Qi Feng and Fan Jinwu's voices and barely reacted. However, no one made a sound, and no one commented because any comment would be a blasphemy to Rui Qianyu's beauty. Rui Qianyu's figure landed lightly. She glanced at Qi Feng and Fan Jinwu and said, "This matter ends here." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was filled with extreme coldness and determination that no one could defy. Qi Feng and Fan Jinwu didn't dare to speak, much less refute. Rui Qianyu wasn't just beautiful. Her strength was even more terrifying. She was the only true element realm cultivator in the Blue Cloud Empire. Without the strength of a true element realm cultivator, Rui Qianyu wouldn't have been able to resolve the life and death battle between Qi Feng and Fan Jinwu so easily. Rui Qianyu's beautiful ice blue eyes swept across the audience. Wherever her gaze landed, everyone lowered their heads in shame. Only one person stared straight at Rui Qianyu without any avoidance. He was Nie Tian. Nie Tian looked at Rui Qianyu with a rather complicated expression. He could see a huge secret on Rui Qianyu. Rui Qianyu's gaze swept across everyone and finally landed on Nie Tian. She said indifferently, "Your name is Nie Tian?" "Yes." Nie Tian nodded. Not only was he not nervous, but he even smiled slightly. Rui Qianyu's beautiful eyes flickered as she said, "You're this year's rookie king. Come with me." His indifferent words stunned everyone in the audience. After Rui Qianyu said that there was no need to announce the rookie king, it was definitely Nie Tian. Even the Blue Cloud Emperor didn't dare to refute Rui Qianyu's words. Qin Yetian froze and couldn't say a word for a long time. He didn't dare to speak either. In front of Rui Qianyu, he did not even have the courage to speak. Without any delay, Rui Qianyu turned and left. Nie Tian bid farewell to Jean de Bayo and the rest, and left with Rui Qianyu. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked at the two figures in disbelief. Until the two figures completely disappeared, everyone still had a dumbfounded expression. BB boss, he left with Dean Royu. After a long time, Jean de Bayo finally reacted. He rubbed his fat face hard to make sure that he wasn't dreaming. Nyeyuro held Bab in her arms and raised her eyebrows. She murmured, "That big sister was so beautiful just now." On the other side, Qin Yetian had a bitter expression on his face. He even had the heart to cry. Nie Tian becoming the newcomer king also meant that their Qin family had to compensate the Jin family with a set of Tier 4 battle armor. Tier 4 battle armor was the clan's cornerstone treasure bestowed to the Qin family by the late emperor. Even Qin Yetian hadn't worn it yet. Lan Binji looked in the direction where Nie Tian disappeared with a venomous look. His pair of eyes were almost spitting fire. Hidden in the crowd, Lan Bingqian's heart was in turmoil. Faintly, he felt that he seemed to have made a wrong decision. He originally had the chance to save Nie Tian, but he didn't. This choice was destined to become the biggest regret in his life. After a while, Nie Tian followed Rui Qianyu to a dense forest in Tyrant Cloud Academy. Nie Tian saw an extremely simple and crude grass hut in the dense forest from afar. He suddenly realized that this grass hut was where Rui Qianyu lived. The dignified headmaster of Tyrant Cloud actually lives in such a simple and crude place. Interesting. Nie Tian shot a glance at Rui Qianyu and smiled playfully. Looking at Rui Qianyu at such a close distance, he could feel her soul-stirring beauty even more. It simply made people not dare to look straight at her. Rui Qianyu looked at Nie Tian very seriously. Her icy blue eyes seemed to be somewhat puzzled. She wanted to see through the youth before her, but how could she possibly see through him? "Your strength is at the 4th level origin spirit realm." Rui Qianyu spoke very coldly, bringing along a sense of indifference as well as a sense of desolation that could not be shaken off. Nie Tian looked at Rui Qianyu's eyes, his heart trembling slightly. Logic told him that this girl before him was definitely someone with a story. Nie Tian nodded, not denying it. Rui Qianyu's brows were tightly knitted, a hint of puzzlement finally appearing in her eyes as she said, "You actually dare to exchange blows with Qin Yetian with the strength of the 4th level origin spirit realm. Who exactly are you?" Nietian was not nervous. He only smiled faintly and replied, "Everyone has their own secrets. I won't tell you mine, just like you won't tell me yours." Rui Qinyu's icy blue eyes narrowed slightly. She had not thought that Nietian could actually maintain such composure in front of her. In the Blue Cloud Empire, everyone would have a look of reverence when they saw her. Only Nietian was an exception. "What you said is very right. I shouldn't pry in your secrets." After a while, Rui Qinyu said seriously, "Nietian, you're the new newcomer king of Tyrant Cloud. According to Tyrant Cloud's rules, you can follow me to cultivate for 10 days. But your strength is too weak. I'll be going to an extremely dangerous place next. I'll give you a month's time. Within a month, if you can't advance to the manifestation realm, you'll lose the chance to cultivate with me." When Rui Qinyu finished speaking, she looked at Nietian with an indifferent expression. Her saying this was actually stripping away Nietian's chance to cultivate with her. Because no one could advance from the 4th level origin spirit realm to the manifestation realm within a month. Even a peerless, monstrous martial arts genius could not possibly do it either. Nietian frowned slightly, but did not have any extreme reaction. Advancing from the 4th level origin spirit realm to the manifestation realm in a month's time. Even the previous lives, Nietian was unable to do it. But in this life, he could do it, and he could do it very easily. Nietian's primordial spirit was the Primal Chaos Original Coffin. The greatest advantage of the Primal Chaos Original Coffin was that it could slow down the flow of time. Inside the Primal Chaos Original Coffin, Nietian possessed 10 times more time than others. A month's time, to Nietian, was practically equivalent to a year's time. Advancing from the 4th level origin spirit realm to the manifestation realm in a year's time was very casual. "All right, no problem." Nietian smiled faintly and agreed very casually. He did not care about the chance to cultivate with Rui Qinyu. What he cared about was Rui Qinyu herself. "You agree?" Rui Qinyu stilled slightly, her towering breasts rising and falling intensely. She thought that she had heard wrongly. "I agree." Nietian smiled relaxedly. Rui Qinyu reacted and nodded, saying, "Leave then. I will always be here. If you advance to the manifestation realm, you can come find me at any time. But remember, you only have a month's time." "All right." This student will take his leave. Nietian bowed slightly, turned around, and left. This was the first time he called himself a student in front of another person. Nietian found it funny in his heart. It was a very strange and comical feeling. "Nietian, who are you? What secrets do you have?" Rui Qinyu watched as the youth's figure gradually disappeared into the distance, her beautiful eyes flashing with a strange light. This was the first time she was interested in another person. This feeling was both foreign and real to her. Chapter 99. Walking out of the dense forest, Nietian turned his head to look in the direction where Rui Qinyu was. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he murmured, "Rui Qinyu, if I'm not wrong, your eyes are one of the legendary 10 great Khanate eyes, the rainbow pupils." The first time Nietian saw Rui Qinyu, he noticed that her eyes were different from the others. They were suffused with a deep blue color. Nietian could basically confirm that Rui Qinyu's eyes were one of the 10 great Khanate eyes, the rainbow pupils. The reason why her eyes were deep blue was because she had opened the blue pupils. The rainbow pupils were the same as Tang 13th's ghost eyes. They were both innate divine abilities, but the rainbow pupils were much more terrifying than the ghost eyes. Back then, Tang Hao was taken in as a disciple by Nietian because he had the ghost eyes. The rainbow pupils was one of the 10 great Khanate eyes. If it could be completely developed, its power would be immeasurable. Among the Heaven Realm's 9 emperors, the Purple Tenuity Emperor, who was ranked 3rd, had the purple demon eyes. But the rainbow pupils were even more terrifying than the purple demon eyes. If Rui Qinyu could grow to the Celestial Emperor realm, she would definitely be a figure comparable to the Heaven Realm's 9 emperors. Rainbow pupils. I didn't expect to encounter it. What a surprise. Nietian smiled slightly in his heart and murmured, "Looks like I have to pay more attention to Rui Qinyu in the future." Returning to Tyrant Cloud Academy, Tian saw Chi Feng and the others waiting for him from afar. Chi Feng was worried that someone would harm Tian, so he waited here in advance for Tian. "Boss, you're back. What did Dean Ryu say to you?" Jean DeBeo ran over with a face full of excitement. Tian did not hide it and repeated Rui Qianyu's words. Advancing from the 4th level Essence Spirit Realm to the Manifestation Realm in a month, isn't Dean Rual you messing with people here? Jean DeBeo had an astonished look on his face, almost wanting to scold her. Dean Rui's actions are a little unreasonable. Chi Feng also nodded slightly. He felt that Rui Qianyu was playing tricks on people. Tian didn't say anything. He smiled faintly and said, "Let's go back first. I'm very weak right now, and I need a rest." Indeed, Tian had just gone through a huge battle, and the crucial thing was that he had consumed a Tier 3 Yuan Burst Pill. Now, the side effects of the Yuan Burst Pill were showing, and his body was extremely weak. The crowd didn't stay any longer and left together. After returning to the Jin Mansion, Tian immediately entered his room. He was too weak and needed to recover. Martial artists could go for a long time without eating. Just by absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, martial artists could maintain the normal operation of their bodies. Tian told everyone not to disturb him and went into his room. The side effects of the Tier 3 Yuan Burst Pill were very strong. It was enough to make a martial artist very weak for the next month. However, it would only take Tian 2 or 3 days to overcome the effects of the Essence Detonation Pill. That was because his body was far stronger than ordinary people's, and he had the Primal Chaos Original Coffin, which gave him 10 times the time of others. At the same time, when Tian and the rest returned to the Jin Mansion, Lan Binji also returned to the Binji Duke Mansion. Bang! Lan Binji's eyes were ferocious. He smashed a 9-colored vase into pieces with one palm. The shattered pieces scattered on the ground were like his heart, shattered beyond repair. Damn it! Damn it! He deserves to be killed. Lan Binji roared furiously like a deranged beast, about to go berserk at any time. Qin Yetian and Qin Yuhu watched from the side with fear and didn't dare to go forward to persuade him. "Tian, I must kill you. I must kill you." Lan Binji couldn't contain the killing intent in his body. An extremely venomous voice rolled out from his throat. "Your Highness, please calm down." Qin Yetian finally took a step forward and spoke carefully. Slap! Lan Binji suddenly turned around and casually waved his hand. An air force slapped Qin Yetian's face, causing half of the latter's face to swell up. Qin Yetian touched half of his flushed face and looked at Lan Binji with a surprised expression. Qin Yetian didn't think that Lan Binji would dare to make a move. He was the commander of the Imperial Guards. Even the Emperor hadn't slapped him in the face before, and he was Lan Binji's biological uncle. Lan Binji actually slapped Qin Yetian in the face. He was practically a mad dog. Slap! At this time, another crisp slap rang out. But this time, the slap landed on Lan Binji's face. Qin Yetian and Qin Yuhu looked at each other and instantly felt a chill down their spines. Who dared to slap Lan Binji? He was a prince. In the next moment, a ghost-like black-robed figure appeared in the hall. This person was completely hidden in the black robe, and his entire body emitted a cold aura that made people feel suffocated. Even Qin Yetian, a giant spirit realm expert, felt quite a bit of pressure when facing this black-robed person. Why you were that person? Qin Yuhu's teeth were already chattering. He recognized that the black-robed person was Tang Yuyu, whom he had seen before. That's right, this person was the #1 assassin of the Bloodbat sect, Tang Yuyu. Scram, Tang Yuyu said in a low voice, simple and direct. Qin Yuhu subconsciously retreated and almost fell. Tang Yuyu turned to look at Qin Yetian and said coldly, "You scram too." His voice wasn't loud, but it contained a suffocating pressure. Qin Yetian felt his entire body being enveloped by a chill, and fine beads of sweat seeped out of his forehead. Tang Yu only had the strength of the 9th level of the Wanxiang realm, while Qin Yetian was already a giant spirit realm martial artist. But Tang Yuyu's battle strength was clearly above Qin Yetian's. Qin Yetian hesitated for a moment, but ultimately still left the hall. Only Lan Binji and Tang Yuyu were left in the hall. Tang Yuyu, you failed. Lan Binji covered half of her face and said through gritted teeth, her eyes full of resentment. Tang Yuyu, Qin Yetian, these two people were originally there to ensure that Lan Binji obtained the best newcomer king. Unexpectedly, the two of them both failed, especially Tang Yuyu. Ever since she became a professional assassin, she had never failed. Even when facing opponents stronger than her, she could deal with them calmly. Never would she have thought that she would actually fall at the hands of a fourth-level essence spirit martial artist. Unforgivable, simply unforgivable. This failure this time, Tang Yuyu was even more pained than Lan Binji. This is the first time I've failed, and it will also be the last time. After a while, Tang Yuyu opened her mouth coldly and said, "Give me some time. I'll definitely kill Nie Tian." No. Suddenly, Lan Binji roared at the top of her lungs. Not only do I want Nie Tian to die, I want everyone around him to die. His younger sister, his brothers, his friends, his family, I want all of them to die. In the end, Lan Binji was like a beast that had completely lost all reason. Enough. Tang Yuyu did not wish to listen on anymore, and said coldly in a deep voice, "I'm only going to kill Nie Tian. The others have nothing to do with me." Finished talking, Tang Yuyu's figure moved, instantly vanishing like a specter. Chapter 100. After Tang Yuyu left Binji's palace, she walked to a quiet place. Lifting up her black robe, she revealed a face of unparalleled beauty. Lan Binji, you really are a mad dog. Father was right. The Lan clan's rule in the kingdom of blue clouds has come to an end. Tang Yuyu's lips curled up perfectly, accentuating her perfect facial features. The father Tang Yuyu was talking about was the leader of the Bloodbat House. Just then, a silver pendant in front of Tang Yuyu's chest suddenly flashed. She turned around and saw a young man's silhouette dashing by. Tang Yuyu didn't pay much attention to it. Instead, she focused all her attention on the silver pendant. This pendant has never lit up before. Why did it suddenly flash? The silver pendant was something Tang Yuyu carried everywhere she went. It had never shown any abnormalities. Why did it flash today? It was very strange. If it was anyone else, they would have thought it was an illusion. But Tang Yuyu was a top assassin, and assassins never believed in illusions. After a long time, Tang Yuyu didn't find anything out of the ordinary. She covered the silver pendant again. Her eyes flashed, and she mumbled, "Tang 13, who are you? What does it have to do with me?" Every time she saw the silver pendant, Tang Yuyu would think of a name. Tang 13. Every time she thought of this name, she would feel a surge of warmth in her heart. It was a very strange feeling. To an assassin, it felt unreal. But she couldn't remember who Tang 13 was. She couldn't remember what Tang 13 looked like. There was only a blurry face that flashed across her mind. At the same time, a running shadow suddenly stopped a few hundred meters away from Tang Yuyu. This shadow was the young man Tang Yuyu saw. This young man was none other than Tang 13. Tang 13 stopped where she was and mumbled, "Why did I have a strange feeling? I felt like I missed something." Tang 13 suddenly turned around and ran a few steps back. She looked at the quiet alleyway she just passed but saw nothing. Tang Yuyu had already left. Was it an illusion? Tang 13 mumbled to herself as she picked up the silver pendant in front of her chest. Her silver pendant and Tang Yuyu's pendant were exactly the same. This kind of pendant was very common, and it was called the heart pendant. It was originally a pair, and the two pendants could sense each other. Tang 13 shook her head, sighed, and continued to run. He wasn't looking for anyone else but Nie Tian. The commotion Nie Tian made in the Imperial City was too big. Even Tang 13, a newbie assassin who just joined the Bloodbat Gate, knew about it. After a while, Tang 13's silhouette appeared in front of the Jin Palace. However, Tang 13 didn't plan on entering from the front door. She quickly circled around to the outer walls of the Jin Manor. Then, like a ghost, she jumped into the Jin Manor and disappeared. At the same time, another familiar figure appeared at the entrance of the Jin residence. It was the Crown Prince, Lan Bingjin. The people of the Jin mansion recognized that it was the crown prince and bowed to let him pass. When Lan Bingchen walked into the Jin residence's main hall, Jin Mingxin and the others were already waiting for her. In the lobby, "Your Highness, are you here for my boss?" Jean de Bao looked at Lan Bingchen. There was no longer the respect he had before. Instead, his face was full of mockery. Jean de Bao already knew that Lan Bingchen was also there. If Lan Bingchen showed up to stop him, then Yetian wouldn't have to fight with Qin Yetian. Sadly, Lan Bingchen made the wrong choice. Lan Bingchen was a little embarrassed. He didn't think that Yetian's capability was so strange that he could actually survive Qin Yetian's attack. However, Lan Bingchen wasn't angry. Instead, he smiled and said, "Mr. Jin, I have something important to discuss with Mr. Yetian." "Something important?" Jean de Bao's expression didn't change for the better. He laughed weirdly. "Boss helped you defeat Prince Bingyi. Is there anything more important than that?" Lan Bingchen's expression turned even uglier. He was speechless. De Bao. Jin Mingxin quickly stopped Jean de Bao from continuing. There were some things that everyone should know. If they were to say it out loud, then it would be tearing apart the last layer of face. Jin Mingxin's reaction was very calm. He still maintained his respect and said, "Your Highness, if you want to find Mr. Nye, I'm afraid you've made a wasted trip. Mr. Nye's body is weak. He's heavily injured and needs to rest. I've specially instructed that no one is allowed to disturb him." No one was allowed to disturb him. This was indeed what Nye Tian said. However, when it came out of Jin Mingxin's mouth, it sounded like an excuse. Lan Bingchen frowned. However, he nodded sincerely and said, "Since it's like that, I will take my leave. Mr. Jin, please help me tell Mr. Nye that I came. In the future, I will come once a day until Mr. Nye is willing to see me." "As you wish," Jean de Bao said coldly. "Even if you come 10 times a day, boss won't see you." Jin Mingxin looked at Jean de Bao and shook his head. "This son of mine is still too young and too impulsive. Goodbye." Lan Bingchen sighed softly and turned around to leave. His silhouette was very sad. After Lan Bingyi left, Jin Mingxin and Jean de Bao exchanged glances and looked at a dark corner at the same time. Jin Mingxin faintly smiled and said, "Friend in the dark, why are you trespassing the Jin residence?" Just as he finished speaking, a shadow walked out from the dark corner. It was Tang 13. Tang 13 awkwardly smiled and said, "I am Nye Tian's friend. Since he is resting, I won't disturb him." After speaking, Tang 13's body moved and he was about to leave. However, how could Jin Mingxin let him go? Jin Mingxin's spiritual energy surged out. A giant gold coin that was 5 to 6 meters in diameter flew out and trapped Tang 13. The gold coin tightened and trapped Tang 13. Jin Mingxin faintly smiled and said, "Since you're here, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Whether or not you're Mr. Nye's friend, we'll know after we meet him." Luckily, Tang 13 said he was Nye Tian's friend. Otherwise, Jin Mingxin wouldn't have trapped him, he would have killed him. No matter what, Jin Mingxin was the president of the Blue Cloud Commerce, and he was at the first level of the giant spirit. The giant gold coin, just now, was a spirit, the money of the universe. All right. Tang 13 looked helplessly at the Jin father and son. He couldn't understand how Jin Mingxin discovered him when his presence was hidden to the extreme. Actually, the one who discovered Tang 13 wasn't Jin Mingxin, but Jean de Bao. Tang 13 had the ghost eye, and his presence was hidden to the extreme. Even Jin Mingxin didn't discover his presence. However, Jean de Bao was different. His origin spirit allowed him to discover anyone lurking in the dark. Because Jean de Bao's spirit wasn't ordinary. It wasn't one of the 3 spirits, but a book. That's right, a book. And this book had a very domineering name, The Demon and God's Blood Scroll. Jean de Bao awakened his spirit at the age of 10 and thought he would be a monster of the martial path. But what made people speechless was that after Jean de Bao awakened his spirit, his strength didn't improve at all. He stayed at the first level of the origin spirit for 5 whole years. Chapter 101. After awakening the celestial demon blood scripture, Jean de Bao's strength didn't increase, but he discovered a few miraculous uses of the celestial demon blood scripture. No matter where Jean de Bao was, the celestial demon blood scripture would automatically sense the surroundings clearly, allowing him to see everything clearly. Moreover, Jean de Bao could easily see the strength of others, even if the opponent was far stronger than him. This time, Jean de Bao was able to sense Tang 13's presence because of the celestial demon blood scripture. Next, Jean Mingxin ordered his men to detain Tang 13. Now that Nie Tian hadn't recovered, Tang 13 naturally couldn't meet him. For the next 2 days, Lan Bingchun came to visit the Jin estate every day, accompanied by another person, Zhang Yifeng. However, Nie Tian was still recovering, so Lan Bingchun and Zhang Yifeng didn't see him. On the 3rd day, Lan Bingchun and Zhang Yifeng rushed to the Jin estate. This time, there was a 3rd person, the president of the Alchemist Guild, Xiao Luyang. Grandmaster Xiao. Jean Mingxin saw Xiao Luyang from afar and hurriedly cupped his hands, smiling. Grandmaster Xiao, your presence brings light to my humble abode. Xiao Luyang's white hair fluttered in the wind as he walked with a majestic gait. He was dressed in an alchemist's black robe with an alchemist badge pinned on his chest. There were 4 shiny golden lines on the badge, indicating that he was a 4th-stage alchemist. Xiao Luyang was the president of the Alchemist Guild and the only 4th-tier alchemist in the Blue Cloud Empire. Moreover, he was also an alchemist employed by the imperial family. His status in the Blue Cloud Empire was incomparably lofty. Even if the Blue Cloud Emperor saw him, he would have to show some respect and trepidation. President Jean, this seat doesn't want to beat around the bush. Please let Mr. Nietian come out. Xiao Luyang strode over, as if he was suppressing a lot of anger. Jean Mingxin was slightly stunned, thinking, why does Xiao Luyang look like he's going to punish me? Did Nietian offend him? But Nietian has been in the Jin estate these days. He hasn't even stepped out of the door. Thinking of this, Jean Mingxin smiled faintly. Grandmaster Xiao, to be honest, Mr. Nietian was injured by Commander Qin a few days ago. Mr. Nye was injured by Governor Qin a few days ago and was currently recuperating. He truly couldn't come out to meet guests. Please forgive me, Master Xiao. Ji Ming thought to himself. He glanced at Zhang Yifeng and saw that the latter was also drenched in cold sweat. It seemed that something big was about to happen. Xiao Luyang waved his long sleeve and angrily said, Mr. Nietian is really arrogant. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng have come to invite him 3 times, but he unexpectedly closed the door and refused to meet them. Now that this old man has personally come to invite him, is he still going to close the door and refuse to meet me? Jean Mingxin slightly furrowed his brows and said, Grandmaster Zhao's words are too much. During the freshman martial meet of Tyrant Cloud Academy, Mr. Nye was severely injured by Qin Yetian. Countless people saw it, including His Highness the Crown Prince and Grandmaster Zhang Yifeng. Moreover, Mr. Nye consumed a Tier 3 Yuan burst pill at that time, and his body is extremely weak now. Grandmaster Xiao is an alchemy expert, so you're naturally more familiar with the might of a rank 3 Yuan burst pill than me. Without a month or 2, it will be very difficult for Mr. Nye to recover. Speaking up to here, Ji Mingxin was no longer polite. He coldly flicked his sleeve and said, Mr. Nye won't meet you. If Grandmaster Xiao has anything to say, we'll talk about it later. Xiao Luyang was the president of the Alchemist Association and had a respected status, but he, Ji Mingxin, wasn't someone to be trifled with. If you want to play hard with me, then I'll accompany you to the end. President Jean, please calm down. Seeing Jean Mingxin's expression change, Lan Bingchun hurriedly stepped forward and said, Grandmaster Xiao was anxious and spoke too harshly. I hope President Jean can forgive him. Mr. Nye was injured by Commander Qin, and it was the royal family's fault. I apologize to Mr. Nye and President Jean on behalf of the royal family. Lan Bingchun's expression turned very unsightly as she said, but now, the royal family really needs Mr. Nye's help. Her Royal Highness, the princess's condition worsened a few days ago, and now she's on the verge of death. I hope President Jean can let Mr. Nye come out to see me. I can represent the royal family to agree to all of Mr. Nye's requests. Her Royal Highness the Princess is critically ill. Jean Mingxin frowned, suddenly understanding in his heart. No wonder Lan Bingqian was so anxious to see Nye Tian, and even brought Zhang Yifeng along. No wonder Xiao Luyang was so anxious, clamoring to see Nye Tian. So it turned out that Her Royal Highness the Princess was critically ill. The Blue Cloud Emperor, Lan Yinhai, had 5 sons but only 1 daughter, Lan Bingxian. Lan Yinhai usually treated Lan Bingxian as the apple of his eye, doting on her very much. However, Lan Bingxian had been suffering from a strange illness since young, causing her body to be extremely weak. Although countless alchemists had tried to treat Lan Bingxian, it was a pity that her condition didn't improve. Instead, it worsened. Some time ago, the Qin clan invited a 4th-ranked alchemist, Gu Sanso, from the Fengqin Empire to treat Lan Bingxian. Not only did Gu Sanso's condition not improve, it even worsened. Xiao Luyang had been treating Lan Bingxian since she was a baby, and the two of them had a father-daughter relationship. Lan Bingji was Lan Bingshuan's older brother, and the two of them were twins. He didn't care about his other brothers, but he cared about his younger sister very much. In fact, Lan Bingji knew that he had no hope of becoming Nye Tian's disciple, but for the sake of his younger sister, he still came to beg Nye Tian. Xiao Luyang originally didn't want to come, but Lan Bingshuan's life was on the line. In the whole Blue Cloud Empire, the only person who could save Lan Bingxian was Nye Tian. Nye Tian was someone who could make Zhang Yifeng willingly submit to and become his disciple. Even Xiao Luyang couldn't do this. A long time ago, Xiao Luyang had also revealed his intention to accept Zhang Yifeng as his disciple, but was unfortunately rejected by Zhang Yifeng. Jean Mingxin frowned. His brain was working furiously, considering whether he should call out Nye Tian. In fact, Jean Mingxin really wanted to call out to Nye Tian, but Nye Tian was indeed very weak at the moment. The side effects of the 3rd-rank Yuan burst pill would not disappear for at least a month. President Jean, since this old man came today, I must see Nye Tian. Seeing that Jean Mingxin was still hesitating, Xiao Luyang said in a deep voice, "Don't say that he's injured. Even if he's about to die, he must come out to see me." Huh? Jean Mingxin slightly raised his head and said coldly, "What does Grandmaster Xiao mean by this? Don't tell me you're threatening me?" Xiao Luyang sneered and said in a cold voice, "This Grandmaster's words are very clear. President Jean can interpret it however you want. But this Grandmaster wants to tell you that Nye Tian's life is not as important as you think. Her Highness the Princess's body is priceless. If something happens to her, His Majesty the Emperor's rage is not something you and I can bear." Zhang Yifeng's complexion immediately changed when Xiao Luyang's words came out. Saying that Nye Tian's life was cheap, Zhang Yifeng would be the first to disagree. It seemed that Xiao Luyang completely didn't know what kind of person Nye Tian was. Lan Bingqian also slightly frowned when she heard it. Xiao Luyang looked down on Nye Tian too much. He shouldn't have said such words. Pa, pa, pa. At this time, a crisp applause suddenly sounded behind everyone as a figure slowly walked over. It was none other than Nye Tian. "Well said, Grandmaster Xiao." The corner of Nye Tian's mouth curled up high, a pondering smile hanging on his face as he said, "Since you think my life is cheap and Her Highness's life is precious, then why do you need to beg me? Letting someone with a cheap life save someone with a precious life, while someone with a cheap life is not willing." Chapter 102. As soon as Nye Tian finished speaking, the entire place fell into dead silence. The oppressive silence was suffocating. Xiao Luyang's body suddenly trembled. He didn't expect Nye Tian to suddenly appear, and he didn't expect Nye Tian to be so domineering. Mr. Nye, teacher, Lan Bingqian, and Zhang Yifeng saw that the situation wasn't right and spoke at the same time. "Zhang Yifeng, whose disciple are you? Don't you know where you should stand?" Nye Tianling didn't wait for Zhang Yifeng to finish speaking and spoke coldly. Nye Tian was angry. He was really angry. The other party had a favor to ask of him, yet he was still so overbearing and even said that his life was cheap. Uncle could tolerate such a thing, but sister-in-law couldn't. Zhang Yifeng felt an inexplicable tremble when he met Niet Tian's gaze, as if he was electrocuted, and beads of sweat immediately appeared on his forehead. Gulp! Zhang Yifeng swallowed a mouthful of saliva and automatically stood behind Niet Tian, not daring to say another word. Lan Bingqian's lips moved, but no sound came out. Jin Mingxin chose to watch from the side. If Xiao Luyang dared to use extreme methods, he, Jin Mingxin, would definitely not show weakness. Xiao Luyang's old face was gloomy, his white hair fluttered, and his entire body was trembling. Stinking brat, you are courting death. A sinister voice came out of Xiao Luyang's throat. He was about to go crazy because of Niet Tian, and he was about to lose his rationality. You have a cheap life. Are you still afraid of death? Niet Tian smiled faintly, with a mocking expression on his face. Right now, Niet Tian had completely recovered. 3 days in the primal chaos origin coffin was equivalent to 30 days in the outside world. Not only did he walk out of the side effects of the explosive Yuan pill, but his strength also increased, advancing to the 5th level of the origin spirit realm. More importantly, the power of stars in Niet Tian's body had already awakened 32 stars. Right now, his battle strength had doubled compared to a few days ago. Although Xiao Luyang's strength was at the 9th level of the Wanxiang realm, if they really fought, he might not be Niet Tian's opponent. After all, alchemists were not good at fighting. Xiao Luyang's old face flushed red as he forcibly suppressed the anger inside his body. He looked at Niet Tian and said in a cold voice, "This old man will ask you again. Are you going to treat the princess?" Niet Tian shook his head slightly. He couldn't help but smile and lightly said, "I'll tell you one more time. Send a guest off." At this time, Xiao Luyang did not understand the situation at all. He thought that Niet Tian was just an ordinary teenager with a bit of heaven-defying talent. As long as he said a few harsh words to make him realize the seriousness of the matter, Niet Tian would naturally submit. However, he was completely wrong. Niet Tian was the kind of person who didn't care about anything. No matter what Niet Tian did, he never considered the consequences. He only did what he liked, because he could bear any consequences. If Xiao Luyang spoke nicely, sincerely, politely, and with more self-restraint, perhaps Niet Tian would be happy and agree. But now it was impossible. Xiao Luyang's eyes turned red, as though they were about to drip blood. As the president of the Alchemist Guild, his status was very high. At any time, as long as he said a word, there would be countless people who would listen and respond. But now, in front of a teenager, his words were useless. He couldn't accept such a result. If he didn't still have a little bit of rationality, he would have rushed up and burned Niet Tian to ashes. Xiao Luyang hated Niet Tian to the point of gnashing his teeth and gnashing his teeth. But he didn't dare to make a move against Niet Tian, because Niet Tian was Lan Bingxuan's only hope to survive. After struggling and hesitating for a long time, Xiao Luyang suddenly said, "Niet Tian, the princess is His Majesty's most beloved child. If you are willing to treat the princess, I can agree to all your requests on behalf of His Majesty." As soon as Xiao Luyang's words came out, Jin Mingxin, Lan Bingqian, Zhang Yifeng, and the others were shocked. Anyone could hear that Xiao Luyang was begging Niet Tian. Xiao Luyang had admitted defeat. Who would have thought that the dignified president of the Alchemist Guild would admit defeat in front of Niet Tian? Niet Tian's eyebrows slightly raised. His face suddenly sank as he said, "All requests." Xiao Luyang nodded heavily and said, "All requests." Lan Bingqian thought that Niet Tian was tempted and said, "Mr. Nye, if you can save my imperial sister, I will agree to all of Mr. Nye's requests on behalf of the imperial family." Niet Tian smiled strangely, not looking at Lan Bingqian at all. Although Lan Bingqian was the crown prince, his authority was certainly not comparable to Xiao Luyang's. Niet Tian looked at Xiao Luyang with a burning gaze. A strange expression flashed in his eyes as he said, "What if I want Lan Bingji to die?" As soon as the words left his mouth, the whole audience went silent. No one thought that Niet Tian's request would be this. Lan Bingqian was also stunned. When he reacted, he couldn't wait for Xiao Luyang to nod and agree. Of course, this was impossible. Lan Binji was a prince and Lan Yunhai's most beloved prince. Sacrificing Lan Binji to save Lan Bingxian was obviously impossible. Xiao Luyang suppressed his anger and said in a cold voice, "Mr. Nye, I know that Prince Binji offended you in the freshman martial meet, but you wanted to die? This is going too far. I can guarantee that if you save the princess, Prince Binji will apologize to you and will never cause trouble for you again. What do you think?" Nye Tian shook his head with a smile and replied, "Not much." Of course, Nye Tian didn't want to kill Lan Binji. He just wanted to know what position Lan Binji held in the emperor's heart and how much authority Xiao Luyang had. From Xiao Luyang's reply, he still had some authority in the Blue Cloud Empire, at least enough to make Lan Binji fear him. "What do you mean, Mr. Nye?" Xiao Luyang's face sank. Nye Tian said indifferently, "My meaning is very clear. Your proposal is not much, and I won't accept it. You can leave." Xiao Luyang's face stiffened as if he had heard wrong. "President Jin, I still have something to do and will take my leave first." Before everyone could come back to their senses, Nye Tian smiled faintly, bid farewell to Jin Mingxin, and left. "Yifeng, come with me." Nye Tian's footsteps suddenly stopped, and he shouted. Zhang Yifeng hurriedly followed. Only until Nye Tian and Zhang Yifeng's figures disappeared did Xiao Luyang and Lan Bingxian regain their senses. "President Jin, Mr. Nye." Lan Bingxian looked at Jin Mingxin blankly, not knowing what to say. Jin Mingxin shook his head and shrugged, expressing that he was unable to help even if he wanted to. Xiao Luyang's body trembled, his face was gloomy, and his breathing was unstable as he stood on the spot, his eyes staring fixedly at the direction where Nye Tian disappeared. Within his eyes, anger, shock, resentment, humiliation, fear, and doubt converged into an indescribable, extremely complicated divine radiance. If looks could kill, Nye Tian would have long been dismembered into thousands of pieces. Jin Mingxin also felt stupefied as he looked at the direction where Nye Tian left. He didn't dare to believe that Nye Tian actually refused to treat the princess. One must know that Lan Bingxian was Lan Yunhai's most beloved person. If Nye Tian really cured Lan Bingxian, then no one would dare to stop him in the Blue Cloud Empire. Chapter 103. Nye Tian brought Zhang Yifeng to a secluded courtyard in the Jin residence. "Teacher, this disciple has misspoken. Please punish me." Seeing that there was no one around, Zhang Yifeng knelt down in fear. "Get up first," Nye Tian said with a smile. Zhang Yifeng thought that Nye Tian called him over to punish him. Zhang Yifeng stood up in fear and didn't dare to raise his head. "Let me ask you, what illness does the princess have?" Nye Tian asked indifferently, not caring what Zhang Yifeng was thinking. Zhang Yifeng was startled and thought that he had heard wrongly. Didn't Nye Tian refuse to treat the princess just now? Why did he suddenly ask about her illness? "I'm asking you a question. Didn't you hear me?" Nye Tian urged in a deep voice. Zhang Yifeng hurriedly said, "Teacher, the princess has a strange illness. Her body has been weak since she was young and can't cultivate. Although countless alchemy masters have treated her, no one has been able to find anything. So, I don't know what illness the princess has." "Can't cultivate?" Nye Tian was startled and continued to ask, "Is there a problem with the princess's yuan meridians?" "No problem," Zhang Yifeng replied and added, "The strangest thing is that the princess can't take any spirit pills or herbs. Once she takes a spirit pill, her body will swell up and she will fall into a coma. It will take a long time for her to recover." "I see." Nye Tian nodded. He already had a guess in his heart and asked, "What happened to the princess this time? Why did she suddenly fall ill?" Zhang Yifeng raised his head slightly and said, "Teacher, do you remember Grandmaster Gu?" "Gu Sanso?" Nye Tian was slightly startled. "Yes." Zhang Yifeng nodded and said, "Grandmaster Gu was specially invited by the Qin clan from the Fengqin Empire to treat the princess. Grandmaster Gu gave the princess a grade 5 spirit pill, the 7 treasure spirit pill. After that, the princess's condition worsened and she has been in a coma for 3 days. It is said that her body is swollen and has black spots. Master Gu and Master Shao really have no way to save the princess. That's why they asked teacher for help. The corners of Nie Tian's mouth curled up slightly. He glanced at Zhang Yifeng and said, "You recommended me to them, right?" Zhang Yifeng's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly knelt down and said anxiously, "This disciple is worried about the princess's illness. Please forgive me, teacher." Nie Tian had guessed correctly. It was Zhang Yifeng who had recommended Nie Tian to the emperor, which was why Xiao Luyang and Lan Bingqian had appeared. Seeing how frightened Zhang Yifeng was, Nie Tian could not help but laugh. He shook his head and said, "Why are you so cowardly, kneeling at the slightest provocation? In the future, you are not allowed to kneel without my permission. Do you hear me?" "Yes." Zhang Yifeng was drenched in cold sweat, but he didn't get up. Suddenly, he looked at Nie Tian with a strange look in his eyes and said emotionally, "Teacher, please treat the princess. This disciple begs you." Nie Tian looked at Zhang Yifeng seriously. Seeming to have thought of something, he asked, "You know this princess?" "Yes." Zhang Yifeng nodded heavily. "What's the story between you and her? Tell me." Nie Tian was very knowledgeable and shrewd. Zhang Yifeng's expression just now revealed a lot of information. There must be a story between him and the princess. Zhang Yifeng lowered his head, looking a little embarrassed. After thinking for a while, he said, "This disciple used to be a beggar. When I was 10 years old, I was lucky enough to meet the princess. She was kind-hearted and gave me a gold coin when she saw me being pitiful. That gold coin saved me from starving to death on the streets. Later, this disciple obtained the devil fire by chance and became who I am today." After saying that, Zhang Yifeng seemed to remember a lot, and his expression became gloomy. "That's it?" Nie Tian was quite interested in listening to the story. "Yes." Zhang Yifeng nodded, but he still had something to say. That year, Lan Bingqian not only gave Zhang Yifeng a gold coin, but also smiled at him. Zhang Yifeng would never forget Lan Bingqian's smile that day. It was so pure and beautiful. To him, it was the most beautiful smile in the world. He was willing to give everything for that smile, even his life. "Teacher, this disciple is begging you, save the princess. She is the kindest person in the world. She shouldn't die so young." Zhang Yifeng's eyes were filled with tears when he said this. Nie Tian looked at Zhang Yifeng and sighed in his heart. What is love in the world? It makes people live and die for it. Sigh. No matter how monstrous a person is, they can't escape love. "All right, you can get up. I already know about the princess' illness. She won't die," Nie Tian said lightly. Zhang Yifeng was very excited and jumped up. "Teacher is willing to save the princess?" Nie Tian said with a bitter smile. "If I don't save her, you will hate me for the rest of your life. This disciple doesn't dare." Zhang Yifeng lowered his head and smiled. At this moment, he suddenly felt that there was a very strong confidence in Nie Tian, like a tall mountain that people could look up to. "Teacher, do you know what illness Her Highness has?" Zhang Yifeng asked immediately. Nie Tian nodded and said, "If my guess is correct, the princess shouldn't be sick. It's just that her physique is different from ordinary people." 10,000 poison body. Nie Tian guessed that Lan Bingqian might have the legendary 10,000 poison body. 10,000 poison body. It belonged to a type of spiritual body, similar to Ling Tian's lotus sacred body. However, the 10,000 poison body was much more terrifying than the lotus sacred body. It should belong to the high-grade yellow rank spiritual body. On the other hand, the lotus sacred physique was only the lowest grade of yellow rank, low-level spiritual physique of heaven and earth. What does teacher mean? This disciple doesn't understand. Zhang Yifeng said with a puzzled face. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "You don't need to understand. Go out with teacher for a while now." "Where?" Zhang Yifeng was even more puzzled. "To a place that specializes in selling poisonous herbs." Nie Tian nodded with a smile. "Then Her Highness." Zhang Yifeng had a worried face, afraid that Lan Bingqian wouldn't be able to hold on. Nie Tian teased in a relaxed manner. "Don't worry. Your princess will be fine. She won't die anytime soon." With the 10,000 poison body, she won't die so easily. With Nie Tian's guarantee, Zhang Yifeng felt a lot more at ease and hurriedly followed behind Nie Tian. Only now did Zhang Yifeng realize that Nie Tian had already completely recovered. There wasn't a single trace of weakness on his body. How is this possible? I saw a teacher consume a rank 3 yuan burst pill with my own eyes. Could it be that the side effect of the yuan burst pill disappeared? Zhang Yifeng was shocked. He felt that this teacher of his was becoming more and more mysterious. He was becoming more and more unable to be measured with common sense. Boss! Just when Nie Tian and Zhang Yifeng walked to the entrance of Jin residence, they bumped into Jin DeBao and the others. When Nie Tian saw Nie Yuro and Xiao Guai's round stomachs, it wasn't hard for him to guess that Jin DeBao must have brought everyone to first-grade residence to eat and drink. Big brother Nie Tian, Rower missed you so much. Nie Yuro jogged over. She seemed to be very happy. Qiu Shan and the others, on the other hand, had a look of astonishment on their faces. They originally thought that it would take at least a month for Nie Tian to leave his room. Nie Tian pinched Nie Yuro's little face and said with a smile, "Ninth sister, you have become fat again." "Of course not." Nie Yuro pouted, pointed at Xiao Guai who was in her arms, and said, "Xiao Guai is the one who has become fat." Looking at Xiao Guai who was in Nie Yuro's arms, Nie Tian was quite shocked. Chapter 104. One had to know that Xiao Guai was not even a month old. When it hatched, it was only the size of a baby's fist. Though it had grown a lot, Xiao Guai was still very sleepy. It was currently sleeping soundly in Nie Yuro's arms. "Boss, where are you and Master Zhang going?" Jin DeBao saw that Nie Tian and his disciple were obviously going out and asked. Jin DeBao was in a good mood these few days because the Qin family had sent over the rank 4 golden thunder battle armor 3 days ago. He was already wearing it. Some things. Nie Tian wanted to fool around, but Nie Yuro quickly said, "I want to go too." Nie Tian saw Nie Yuro's pleading look and could only nod. Jin DeBao and the others naturally went with them. "You want to come too?" Nie Tian suddenly said. "You managed to escape?" Jin DeBao was also surprised. Qiu Shan, Qiu Ling, and the others were shocked. They didn't know who Nie Tian and Jin DeBao were talking to. "All right, I'll come too." Tang 13's figure appeared like a ghost, scaring Qiu Shan and the others. "Boss, this guy is really your friend?" Jin DeBao looked at Tang 13 in shock. Tang 13 was originally captured by Jin Mingxin and locked in the woodshed. He didn't think he would escape. And Nie Tian nodded and asked Jin DeBao, "How did you find him?" Nie Tian was able to detect Tang 13's existence because his psychic power was very strong and his perception was extraordinary. But Jin DeBao was just a rookie at the first level of the Origin Spirit Realm. How could he sense Tang 13? Jin DeBao snickered and said proudly, "I found him when I wanted to." Nie Tian shook his head, guessing that Jin DeBao's Yuan spirit was different from others. Since he wasn't willing to say, then he naturally wouldn't ask. After all, every martial artist had their own secrets. Walking out of the Jin Manor, the group headed towards the martial market in the center of Blue Cloud City. Wu City. Almost every big city had one. As the name suggested, the items traded in the martial market were all related to the cultivation of martial artists. There were spirit pills, spirit weapons, spirit beasts, slaves, and large-scale auctions. The martial city was located in the heart of the royal city. Despite its small size, it was the heart of the royal city. In fact, it was even more bustling than the royal palace and the apothecary guild. The entrance to the martial market was heavily guarded by the imperial city's guards, and not just anyone could enter. Arriving at the entrance of the martial market, Jin DeBao paid the entrance fee of 1,000 gold coins before everyone could enter. The Wu City was divided into 5 regions: the medicine market, the soldier market, the beast market, the slave market, and the auction house. After entering Wu City, Nie Tian and the others did not go to the 5 regions. Instead, they were led by a servant towards a dense forest at the edge of the city. "Everyone, the black market is just ahead. Follow this path and you'll see it at the end." The manservant pointed at the deep path in front of him and said with a smile. Jean de Bayo gave the manservant 1,000 gold coins as a reward, and the manservant left. Boss, are we really going to the black market? My dad said that the black market is a forbidden area in the royal city. Once you enter, it's useless even if you're prince. The black market is not controlled by the royal family. Jean de Bayo looked at the dark path in front of him with a face full of hesitation. The black market was the 6th unknown area of the Wu City. The reason why Nietian wanted to enter the black market was to buy large amounts of poisonous herbs. Lan Bingxian had the body of 1,000 poisons. Only by feeding her poison could her body improve. However, there were very few places that sold poisonous herbs. Even the apothecary guild only had a few kinds of poisonous herbs. Without a choice, Nietian decided to come to the black market. However, the black market was the most special existence in the royal city. It was not controlled by the royal family, and the environment inside was extremely dangerous. Normal people would not dare to enter. Don't worry, Nietian smiled faintly and looked at Tang 13 meaningfully. With him here, it'll be fine. Jean de Bayo looked at Tang 13 suspiciously. He's only at the 9th level of the origin spirit realm. Is he that strong? Tang 13 froze slightly and then smiled. Little fatty, are you looking down on me? Actually, Tang 13 was very curious how Jean de Bayo knew his strength. That's right, Tang 13's current strength was indeed at the 9th level of the origin spirit realm. Just 2 months ago, he was only at the 5th level of the origin spirit realm. In a short 2 months, his strength increased by 4 small realms. It was terrifying. Nietian was not too surprised. Tang 13 had the ghost eye. As the ghost eye became more and more terrifying, his strength would only increase faster and faster in the future. Also, Nietian knew that Tang 13 was an assassin from the Bloodbath Gate. With him around, he was more or less at ease. Jean de Bayo couldn't stand Tang 13's pretentious manner. He snorted and didn't say anything else. Let's go. Nietian smiled faintly and didn't waste any more time. Just as Nietian and the others entered the small path, a ghost-like figure appeared. Tang Yu looked at the backs of Nietian and the others. The corner of her mouth curled up coldly. She laughed sinisterly in her heart. Nietian, since you've come to the black market, don't go back. Tang Yu had been waiting for Nietian to come out of the G-Manor these past few days. However, she didn't dare to make a move in Blue Cloud City. Who would have thought that Nietian would actually come to the black market? This was an unexpected surprise for Tang Yu. But at this moment, Tang Yu had a strange feeling. She kept thinking of Tang 13, and that blurry face would mysteriously appear in her mind. Could it be that I'm too nervous? Tang Yu calmed down. Nietian was the only person who made her fail. She wouldn't allow herself to fail a second time. Thinking of this, Tang Yu didn't stay any longer and quickly followed. Nietian and the others walked along the small path. When they reached the end, what appeared in front of them wasn't a forest, but a bustling market. There was only a layer of dense forest between the black market and the martial market. Is this the legendary black market? There's nothing special about it. Jean de Bayo looked at the market in front of him. It wasn't much different from an ordinary market. The worry on his face lessened a little. Little fatty, you'll know what's special about the black market soon. Tang 13 teased. Her eyes seemed to be looking behind her. Maybe it was her killer's instinct, but Tang 13 kept feeling that someone was following her. This feeling made her uneasy. He had never felt this way before. Who's there? Just as Nietian stepped into the martial market, 2 huge figures suddenly appeared. The 2 black-clothed martial artists were more than 2 meters tall. They looked like iron towers. Their entire bodies were filled with ferocious auras, giving people great pressure. Nietian looked at the 2 people who suddenly appeared and frowned slightly. He was a little shocked. I didn't expect the 2 watchdogs of the black market to be at the 5th tier of the all creations realm. Greetings, warriors. We're here to buy some medicinal ingredients, Nietian said calmly. Is this your first time at the black market? One of the black-clothed martial artists glanced at Nietian and the others. He didn't find anything strange and asked in a deep voice. Yes. Tian nodded slightly. Chapter 105. 10,000 gold coins. Jean de Bayo jumped in fright. 10,000 gold coins could almost buy a rank 3 spirit pill. Was the black market made of gold? Just the entrance fee was 10,000 gold coins. With a faint smile, Tian gestured to Jean de Bayo to hand over the money. Jean de Bayo didn't have much, but he had a lot of money. Eating a meal could cost 10,000 gold coins, so paying an entrance fee of tens of thousands was nothing to Jean de Bayo. Tian obviously knew that these two people saw that they didn't have any strong people, so they were ruthlessly extorting them. But Tian didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble. If he could use gold coins to solve the problem, there was no need to resort to force. Jean de Bayo took out 7 low-grade essence crystals from his interspatial ring and handed them to the black-clothed cultivators. In the world of cultivators, metal coins were the lowest form of currency. High-grade transactions were directly replaced by essence crystals. Low-grade essence crystals were worth 10,000 gold coins. Mid-grade essence crystals were worth 10,000 gold coins. And, of course, there were high-grade essence crystals and top-grade essence crystals. The two black-clothed cultivators took the essence crystals, and their attitude immediately changed. They said respectfully, "I'm called Zhu Wan. This is my brother, Zhu Qian. What medicinal ingredients does young master want to buy? We brothers are willing to help." Zhu Wan saw that Jean de Bayo was generous, and it was obvious that Tian was the leader of this group, so he subconsciously thought that Tian must have an extraordinary background. Maybe he was the young master of some hidden family, so he immediately licked his boots like a pug. "This is our first time coming to the black market, so we're not familiar with everything here. I see that you two are very strong, so I want to invite you two to be our guards to ensure our safety in the black market. Is that okay?" Tian smiled faintly, appearing gentle and refined. The black market was, after all, an unsafe place. It would be best if there were 2 guards. Although Zhu Wan and Zhu Qian's strength wasn't at the peak, they were enough to be guards. Zhu Wan smiled and bowed. "I'm willing to serve young master." Tian nodded and said, "De Bayo, give a mid-grade essence crystal to Zhu Wan." Jean de Bayo pursed his lips. Although he was slightly unwilling, he still took out a mid-grade essence crystal and passed it to Zhu Wan. Zhu Wan beamed with joy when he got a piece of mid-grade origin crystal. His face was like a blooming chrysanthemum. Tian didn't care much about it. Money was just a worldly possession and had no value to him. "I want to buy some highly toxic herbs. Please lead the way." Tian didn't bother being polite with Zhu Wan and Zhu Qian. "If young master wants to buy medicinal ingredients, let's go to the Danhart Pavilion." Zhu Wan was very happy as he respectfully led the way. After a while, Zhu Wan brought Tian and the others into a shop called Danhart Pavilion. The Danhart Pavilion was located in a remote corner of the black market. Furthermore, the shop was very old, giving people a very shabby feeling. Tian walked into the shop and smiled when he saw the herbs on display. Zhang Yifeng followed closely by Tian's side. This was his first time coming to the black market and his first time seeing non-traditional medicinal herbs. Zhang Yifeng was very surprised because he hadn't seen almost half of these herbs before. At this time, a gray-robed old man with a goatee appeared beside Tian. He squinted his shrewd eyes and asked with a smile, "Young master, what do you want to buy?" Tian was slightly startled. He turned around and gave the old man a deep look. This old man was not simple. He could actually appear beside Tian without a sound. If he didn't take the initiative to speak, Tian wouldn't even notice his existence. He was definitely a pill Dao expert. Tian guessed that this old man's mental strength was definitely above the 50th rank. 50th rank? That was a 5th rank pill master. A 5th rank pill master was definitely a supreme existence in the Blue Cloud Empire. Tian was very curious. Why would a pill Dao master stay in the black market of a third-rate empire? The old man smiled faintly and said, "This old man is Gu Yi, the shopkeeper of the Danhart Pavilion. Old man Gu, this young master wants to buy some highly toxic medicinal herbs. Don't you usually like to tinker with some poisonous pills? There must be a lot of highly toxic medicinal herbs. Juwon seemed to be very familiar with Gu Yi, as he said carelessly. Tian glanced at Juwon and guessed that he didn't know Gu Yi's true strength at all. If Juwon knew that Gu Yi was a 5th-rank pill master, he didn't know if he would still talk to him like this. Gu Yi thought nothing of it as he gave Tian a strange look and said with a smile, "Young master wants to buy highly toxic medicinal herbs?" Tian nodded his head lightly and said, "Master Gu, this one is Tian. I want to buy some 3rd-rank and 4th-rank toxic medicinal herbs, the more the better." Zhang Yifeng gave Tian a strange look. This was the first time he saw Tian being so respectful in front of others. "The more the better?" Gu Yi chuckled but asked, "Young Master Nya, don't blame this old man for talking too much. This old man wants to know, what does young master want these highly toxic medicinal herbs for?" "To save people." Tian had a calm face and was extremely indifferent. "Save people? I think it's more like to harm people," Juwon said in his heart. It was no wonder who would believe that highly toxic medicinal herbs could save people. Gui looked at Tian seriously, as if he was making sure that the latter wasn't lying. "All right." Gu Yi finally nodded his head and said, "Young Master Nye said that whatever medicinal herbs you want to buy, as long as the Danhar Pavilion has it, we can sell it to you. And we can sell it to you at a low price." Gu Yi suddenly took a look at Zhang Yifeng and added. Tian nodded his head lightly and said, "Soul-devouring flower, heart-rotting grass, black essence stone, white leaf, empty lotus." Tian listed out tens of highly toxic medicinal herbs in one breath, causing everyone to be dumbfounded. Even Zhang Yifeng went into a daze when he heard that, because he had never heard of many of the medicinal herbs. Gu Yi had a calm face and said, "I have most of the medicinal herbs, young Master Nya. Please wait for a moment." Gu Yi turned around and left. Zhang Yifeng hurriedly grabbed onto the opportunity and asked Tian about the various medicinal herbs that were placed in the hall. Tian answered them one by one. In the entire hall, he knew all the medicinal herbs like the back of his hand. Everyone else was dumbstruck. They didn't expect that Tian would be so knowledgeable about various medicinal herbs. The Juwon and Ju Qian brothers were also in disbelief. The way they looked at Tian slowly changed, becoming more respectful. "Teacher, what is this?" Suddenly, Zhang Yifeng's gaze was attracted by a black stone that was placed in the center of the hall. The black stone was the size of a fist and was completely black. Upon closer inspection, there were actually faint dark patterns distributed on the surface of the black stone. The circles were like ripples in the water, extremely orderly. When Tian saw this black stone, his expression changed. "Star Soul Stone." Tian was shocked. He didn't expect that he would actually see a piece of Star Soul Stone here. Star Soul Stone, a 7th-rank spiritual material, was formed from the crystallization of a meteorite and was extremely rare. Actually, to be precise, Star Soul Stones weren't medicinal herbs and didn't have any medicinal value. Star Soul Stones were mainly used to refine spirit weapons. The reason why Tian was interested in Star Soul Stones was not because Star Soul Stones were really very precious, but because he was in dire need of Star Soul Stones right now. Tian's sword Absolute Heaven Slash was still a broken sword. He had always wanted to refine sword Absolute Heaven Slash again, but he hadn't been able to find suitable materials. Chapter 106. Tian, of course, did not expect the Star Soul Stone to restore the sword Absolute Heaven Slash to a level 9 divine weapon, but at least it could make the sword Absolute Heaven Slash complete and no longer a broken sword. Once the sword Absolute Heaven Slash was repaired, Tian could once again cultivate the sword technique he created in his previous life. AO Sword Art. In his previous life, Tian was obsessed with the way of the sword, and his comprehension of the way of the sword had already reached the extreme realm, possessing his own unique, profound meaning of the sword. Tian fused several kinds of heaven-grade sword techniques, studied them for several years, and finally created a set of sword technique, naming it AO Sword Art. After rebirth, because he did not have a suitable sword, Yet Tian did not use the AO sword art. AO sword art was a supreme sword technique that surpassed heaven grade. If he used a broken sword, it would be too humiliating. This is a star soul stone, a 7th grade spiritual material. But it is not a medicinal material, but a material for refining spirit weapons. Nie Tian explained while staring at the star soul stone. He had already made up his mind that he must obtain the star soul stone. The sword Absolute Heaven Slash was originally forged from the heart of stars and was very compatible with the star soul stone. Nie Tian did not want to miss such a good opportunity. A material for refining spirit weapons. Zhang Yifeng nodded slightly, obviously not too interested. At this time, Gu Yi walked out from the inner hall and said with a clear laugh, I really did not expect that at such a young age, young Master Nie not only knows all kinds of medicinal materials like the back of his hand, but also dabbled in spiritual materials. It really makes this old man have a whole new level of respect, as expected of a young genius. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Old Gu is overpraising me. Gu Yi walked over and opened the storage bag, and a variety of medicinal materials appeared on the table. There were at least 10 types. When these medicinal materials came out, everyone immediately smelled a pungent smell. It was very complicated and hard to describe. Nie Tian only swept a glance and said, Old Gu, there is no problem with the medicinal materials. Keep them. Gu Yi nodded, kept all the medicinal materials, and directly handed the storage bag to Nie Tian and said, a total of 30 medicinal materials for portions of each, and all of them are 4th grade. According to the market price, a 4th-tier medicinal herb is between 10,000 gold coins to 100,000 gold coins. This old man calculates the lowest price for young Master Nie, 10,000 gold coins. All the medicinal ingredients add up to a total of 1,200,000 gold coins. This old man will give young Master Nie a discount and charge you 1,000,000 gold coins. What does young Master Nie think? 1,000,000 gold coins. Just as Gu Yi finished speaking, everyone's jaws dropped, their faces filled with disbelief. No one would have thought that this pile of medicinal herbs would be so expensive. Geezer Gu, you're not trying to scam young Master Nie because he's young, are you? Zhu Wan asked in a low, muffled voice. Gu Yi chuckled and said, my price is absolutely fair. Young Master Nie is extremely clear on this. Yes. Nie Tian nodded and said, Old Gu's price is very fair and gave me a great discount. But I will not let Old Gu suffer. How about this? I'm willing to pay 2,000,000 gold coins to buy these herbs. 2,000,000 gold coins. This time, Zhu Wan was completely stunned. There was actually a buyer who took the initiative to increase the price of the seller, and the price was directly doubled. Zhu Wan looked suspiciously at Nie Tian, thinking in his heart, this kid is really a sucker. His head was either kicked by a donkey or squeezed by a door. Nie Tian naturally had his own reasons for increasing the price. Firstly, these medicinal ingredients were indeed worth the price, and secondly, he wanted to be on good terms with Gu Yi to pave the way for the Star Soul Stone. Since young Master Nie is so courteous, this old man will not refuse. Gu Yi chuckled. Of course he agreed. Behind Nie Tian, Jean de Bao had a bitter expression on his face. Luckily, he brought a lot of money, otherwise he wouldn't be able to afford it. Nie Tian was worried that Jean de Bao didn't bring enough money, which was why he said 2,000,000 gold coins. Otherwise, he would definitely offer more than 5,000,000 gold coins. In any case, the money would definitely be paid by the royal family, and it would be doubled. Who asked these medicinal ingredients to be used for the princess treatment? After Jean de Bao paid, Nie Tian's gaze was fixed on the Star Soul Stone. Gu Yi was a sly old fox. How could he not understand Nie Tian's meaning, and immediately said with a smile, Young Master Nie, this Star Soul Stone is our shop's treasure. No matter how much young Master Nie offers, this old man will not sell it. Although Gu Yi rejected with a smile, it was really difficult to make him change his mind. Nie Tian wasn't anxious and said with a smile, Is old Gu a grandmaster refiner? No. Gu Yi shook his head with a smile. Nie Tian nodded with a smile and said, Old Gu opened the Dan Hart Pavilion It doesn't seem appropriate to use a spiritual material used to refine spirit weapons as the shop's treasure. Gu Yi's face instantly stiffened and said, although the main use of the Star Soul Stone is not to refine pills, it is rare. Moreover, this is a gift from a friend, so this old man is using it as the shop's treasure. Niet Tian continued to smile and finally got to the main topic and said, to be honest, I really need the Star Soul Stone. I would like to ask old Gu to part with it. Gu Yi didn't speak and only smiled as he shook his head. Niet Tian said, I have a 7th-tier medicinal herb here. It's even rarer than the Star Soul Stone, and I want to use it to exchange for the Star Soul Stone with old Gu. I wonder if old Gu is interested? 7th-tier medicinal herb. Gu Yi's eyes suddenly lit up, and a strange expression flashed across his wrinkled face, as he was obviously very interested, and said, why don't young Master Nye take out the medicinal herb for me to see? Nye Tian nodded his head lightly, and took out a stalk of strange whisker-like medicinal herb from his storage bag. When Zhang Yifeng saw the medicinal herb in Nye Tian's hands, his expression couldn't help but stiffen. The medicinal herb in Nye Tian's hands was none other than the purple dragon whisker that he had obtained from the Alchemist Association. This is actually a 7th-tier medicinal herb. Zhang Yifeng's heart trembled. No wonder Nye Tian insisted on obtaining the purple dragon whisker that day. Nye Tian passed the purple dragon whisker to Gu Yi, but didn't speak, and waited for Gu Yi to appraise it himself. If Gu Yi didn't recognize the purple dragon whisker, then Nye Tian couldn't do anything about it. Gu Yi received the purple dragon whisker and directly lifted up the long snake tail. When he saw the purple dragon whisker, his expression changed, and he immediately laughed out loud. It's really the purple dragon whisker. So the ancient book's records about the snake-tail root is real. The purple dragon whisker really exists. Seeing Gu Yi's excited look, Nye Tian's worried heart finally relaxed. Young Master Nye, this old man is willing to use the Star Soul Stone to exchange for the purple dragon whisker. Gu Yi's face was agitated, and he was extremely excited. Luckily, Gu Yi had once read about the description of the snake-tail root in an ancient book, and it had mentioned the purple dragon whisker in detail. Otherwise, he really wouldn't know that the purple dragon whisker still existed in this world. Deal. Nye Tian smiled faintly. He was naturally happy. Exchanging the Star Soul Stone and the purple dragon whisker, both parties got what they wanted, and no one suffered a loss. After completing the exchange, Gu Yi carefully placed the purple dragon whisker at the place where the Star Soul Stone was originally stored, and the smile on his old face was like a blooming chrysanthemum, extremely brilliant. Nye Tian got the Star Soul Stone, and no longer stayed. He turned around and prepared to leave. Young Master Nye, please wait. Gu Yi called out to Nye Tian at this moment. Is there anything else, old Gu? Nye Tian turned around, as he was really a little afraid that Gu Yi would go back on his words. Gu Yi chuckled, but walked to Nye Tian's side, and said in a low voice, Young Master Nye, you seem to have offended someone. There's a tail following you outside. Chapter 107. Nye Tian's complexion changed drastically. He spread out his divine sense, but nothing was out of place within a few hundred meters. To be able to escape the detection of my divine sense, the other party is definitely a professional killer. Could it be the person who appeared at the freshman martial meet? Nye Tian's heart trembled. Of course, he wouldn't forget that during the freshman martial meet, when he and Qin Yetian were fighting, someone had tried to assassinate him. Gu Yi nodded his head slightly and said in a soft voice, the other party is a hidden expert, and his strength is very strong. Young Master Nye must be careful. Finished speaking, Gu Yi let out another hearty laugh, loudly saying, Young Master Nye, take care, this old man won't see you off. Obviously, Gu Yi was only reminding Nye Tian out of goodwill, and he didn't want to bring trouble upon himself. Old Gu, I will take my leave. Nye Tian nodded towards Gu Yi, guessing in his heart that Gu Yi's spiritual energy should have reached the 60th level and above, at least a 6th-tier alchemist. However, alchemist battle power was not that strong, so not to mention that Gu Yi would not help. Even if he wanted to, he might not be able to. Walking out of the Dan Hart Pavilion, Niet Tian immediately became cautious. His current strength was at the 5th level of the Origin Spirit Realm, and he had awakened 32 stars of astral energy. But he did not have any astral souls on him, so his battle prowess was much weaker compared to a few days ago. Xiao Shan, Tang 13 were being followed. The opponent is a master. Be careful. Niet Tian's face didn't change as he secretly sent a message to Xiao Shan and Tang 13. Xiao Shan and Tang 13 were not weak on Niet Tian's side. As for the Zhu Wan and Zhu Qin brothers, they were only temporary guards. If they were to fight, they would definitely run away. Tang 13 did not react, but Xiao Shan's expression changed. He subconsciously looked around. Tang Yuyu, who was hiding in the dark, noticed this subtle movement. Damn it, I've been discovered by them. Tang Yuyu's face sank slightly. He already knew that the other party had discovered him. Originally, Tang Yuyu wanted to find a more suitable place and time to make her move, but now, she couldn't wait any longer. Niet Tian die. Tang Yuyu's heart trembled, his lips quivering. To be able to die under my counter-cross slash, your title as the Rookie King is not in vain. As soon as Tang Yuyu's voice fell, she opened her palm in the next moment. The two black feather blades seemed illusory as they formed a strange cross. Kill! With a palm strike, the cross-shaped crow feather blade caused space to tremble. Soon after, like a river bursting its banks, a frightening aura suddenly erupted and attacked Niet Tian at lightning speed. At this moment, Tang Yuyu was 300 to 400 meters away from Niet Tian and the others. For Tang Yuyu to actually attack from such a distance, it was enough to show her confidence in her own strength. The reverse cross kill arrived in the blink of an eye. When he was about 100 meters away from Niet Tian felt that something was wrong. Cold. In an instant, Niet Tian felt an extreme chill. This was a bone-chilling feeling that made one feel a deep sense of despair. Oh no! At that critical moment, Niet Tian's heart suddenly trembled. At this moment, he still had time to dodge. However, if he dodged, Nie Yuro, Zhang Yifeng, and the others behind him would undoubtedly die. At this moment, Niet Tian did not have any star souls. Even if he forcefully used the 3 seals of the God of War, he would not be able to display its power. There is only one path in front of Niet Tian. Resist the reverse cross kill. 17th Sword. At the moment of life and death, Niet Tian's absolute heaven slash appeared in his hand. He drew a circle in the air, and a near-perfect sword shield appeared. 17th Sword. This was the move of Niet Tian's proud sword art. This was the first time he used the proud sword art in this life, and it was for defense. At the same time, the 10 yuan meridians in Niet Tian's body revolved crazily. The first stage of the 9 extremes War God Art, Golden Sky Battle Armor, was activated. Niet Tian had already decided to take this reverse cross slash head-on. Everything happened in an instant. Everyone saw Niet Tian suddenly move, but they had no idea what was going on. Bang! In the next moment, the powerful reverse cross kill struck the sword shield head-on, causing sparks and sparks to fly. Crack! Bang! The sword shield couldn't block the reverse cross kill and shattered. Niet Tian's body was hit by the powerful shockwave, and he was forced to retreat. A 10-meter-long crack appeared on the ground. After retreating a dozen meters, Niet Tian finally steadied his body. Then, Niet Tian's chest tightened, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. 17th Sword and the Golden Sky Battle Armor's defense finally allowed Niet Tian to withstand the fatal blow. Big Brother Niet Tian. In the next moment, Nie Yuro was the first to react, and she shouted out loud, "Don't come near me!" Niet Tian roared. He already knew that the opponent's target was him, and anyone who came near him would be in danger. Xiao Shan, Tang 13, Zhang Yifeng, and the others all paled. They looked into the distance in terror, but they didn't see anyone. A top-notch assassin, Tang 13, was shocked. She couldn't believe that Niet Tian could sense the opponent's presence under these circumstances, and even defend himself. If Gu Yi hadn't warned him, Niet Tian wouldn't have been so nervous. He wouldn't have been able to react in such a short time. and he would have become a corpse. Who's there? How dare you act so presumptuously in the black market? You're courting death. Ju Wan roared. He didn't understand the situation at all, thinking that the person in the dark was just an ordinary assassin. Ju Wan and Ju Qian were well-known figures in the black market, and they couldn't stand the fact that someone was attacking them from behind. You're courting death. Tang Yu stood in the distance, her beautiful eyes almost spitting fire. She hadn't expected that Nie Tian would still be able to avoid her fatal blow. To her, this was the greatest humiliation in her career as an assassin. It was unforgivable. Crow Featherblade. With a shout, a pair of black wings appeared on Tang Yu's back. With a shake of the wings, two black feather blades shot out like arrows piercing through the air. The black feather blades were sharp and cold, like arrows released from a bow. The sudden display of power seemed to be able to destroy everything. It's this move again. Nie Tian's heart skipped a beat. He was very familiar with this martial technique. It was the same one Tang Yu had used when she ambushed him. Come out. Ju Wan and Ju Qian roared at the same time, not sensing the danger. Uft, uft. Two black feather blades flew past, leaving two lines of blood in the air. The heads of the Ju brothers fell to the ground. This scene made everyone suck in a breath of cold air. Ju Wan and Ju Qian were both at the 5th tier of the Wanxiang realm. Although they weren't top-notch, they could still intimidate a group. They didn't expect that the two would be like lambs to the slaughter in front of Tang Yu. Qiu Shan, take everyone away. Nie Tian knew how powerful his opponents were, so he growled. Nie Tian guessed that Tang Yu's battle prowess was definitely comparable to Qin Yitian's, or even higher. If the others stayed, not only would they not be able to help him, but they would also become a burden to him. Chapter 108. Big Brother Nie Tian. Nie Yiro was obviously unwilling to leave and shouted. Nie Tian ignored her and shouted to Zhang Yifeng. Zhang Yifeng, protect her! Zhang Yifeng was a 3rd-tier alchemist, but also had the strength of a 9th-level origin spirit. His true battle strength was above Qiu Shan's. Yes. Zhang Yifeng answered and nodded heavily. Even if he died, he must do what Nie Tian ordered. Jean de Bao also realized that there was no point in staying and could only leave first. Tang Yu maintained a distance of several hundred meters from Nie Tian and the others, so even Jean de Bao's divine demon blood scroll did not discover her presence. Qiu Shan, Zhang Yifeng, Jean de Bao, Qiu Ling and Nie Yiro left quickly. Luckily, Tang Yu was not interested in them and let them leave. Tang 13 chose to stay. He had a strange feeling in his heart that the assassin in the dark made him feel an inexplicable fear. Nie Tian knew Tang 13's strength, so he allowed him to stay. Nie Tian. After Qiu Shan and the others left, Tang Yu's figure appeared for the first time. Her whole body was hidden in a black robe, and she emitted a cold, killing intent. She was about 100 meters away from Nie Tian and Tang 13. The moment she saw Tang Yu, Tang 13's eyes flashed, and her heart felt an inexplicable fear. Tang Yu's gaze swept past Tang 13. Although there was a strange and familiar feeling, she did not care. And yet Tianling looked at Tang Yu coldly and said, "The one who attacked me at the freshman martial gathering was you, right?" Nie Tian was a little surprised. He did not think that the assassin who attacked him would be a woman, and so young at that. Although Nie Tian could not see Tang Yu's face, judging from her voice, she should be a teenage girl. A martial artist at the 9th level of the all-creation realm in his teens. This kind of martial talent was truly astonishing. Tang Yu's black robe trembled as she raised her head slightly and said, "Nie Tian, you actually escaped from me twice. I want to see how strong you are. My strength is enough to kill you." Nie Tian looked at Tang Yu from afar. The heaven and earth spiritual energy around his body began to become active. Tang Yu had made a move against Nie Tian twice, and they were both fatal moves. Nie Tian naturally would not allow such a person to live. In order to kill Tang Yu, Nie Tian only had one choice, which was to use the 3 seals of the divine god of battle. This time, Nie Tian was not going to use the flowing killing seal, but the annihilation earth seal. Among the three imprints of victory, the soul-extinguishing heavenly seal was the strongest, followed by the annihilation earth seal and the flowing life seal. The flowing human-killing seal had once allowed Nie Tian to defeat Ba Xiang, who was at the 4th level origin spirit realm, when he was still in essence meridian martial artist. The power of the annihilation earth seal was even more terrifying than the flowing human seal. It was more than enough to kill Tang Yuyu. Arrogant. With a sneer, Tang Yuyu's expression turned cold. It was as if his entire body was covered with a layer of ice that wouldn't melt for 1,000 years. Tang 13 looked at Tang Yuyu and frowned. She seemed to be thinking about something. Dark feather explosion. However, it was obvious that Tang Yuyu would not give Nie Tian and Tang 13 time to think. With a shout, a pair of black wings appeared on his back. The black wings were formed by thousands of floating black feather blades. They were almost illusory and emitted an extremely murderous aura. In the next moment, the black wings suddenly separated from Tang Yuyu's body and flew into the air. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless whistling sounds pierced through the air as countless black feather blades appeared in the air. It was as if thousands of arrows were being shot at the same time. The black feather blades covered the sky and the earth as if they could destroy the heaven and earth in the next moment. What a powerful martial technique. Feeling the enormous aura of the dark feather explosion, Nie Tian's heart sank, and he was slightly shocked. A martial technique of this scale was enough to destroy an army in an instant. Protect yourself. Nie Tian glanced at Tang 13 and formed a hand seal with his hand. His body emitted an endless amount of energy. In an instant, the power of heaven and earth changed. In the surrounding 100 meters, all the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered towards Nie Tian. Tang 13 looked at Nie Tian in shock. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak. Annihilation Earth Seal. Open. Nie Tian roared. A horrifying aura erupted from his body as he raised his palms slightly. Rumble. Following the rise of Nie Tian's palms, the earth seemed to be pulled by a powerful force. The entire piece of earth was lifted up. It was a full 10 meters in radius, like a horrifying little mountain. This. Tang Yu looked at the floating little mountain in the air and was stunned. She never thought that Nie Tian, who was only at the 5th level origin spirit realm, could actually release such a horrifying power. Countless black feather blades landed on the little mountain in the air, but were unable to break through the thick layer of earth. Die. Nie Tianling smiled coldly. His rumbling voice was like the final judgment. He flipped his hands, and the whole little mountain was like a heavy shot put, smashing towards Tang Yuyu. Tang Yuyu's eyes revealed a look of fear. If she was hit by this little mountain, just this kind of pure power would be very hard to bear. She wanted to escape, but it was already too late. Dragon Crow Knight Slash. In the moment of danger, Tang Yuyu's body trembled. 9 pairs of black wings suddenly appeared on her back. The 9 pairs of black wings flapped in unison. The sudden eruption of power converged into a violent and vigorous force. Rumble. In the next moment, the little mountain smashed down. The surrounding earth trembled, and dust rose up to a few meters in all directions. Dust filled the sky, and sand and stones flew everywhere. After a long time, the dust finally dispersed. Nie Tian's face was as pale as paper. Forcefully using the Annihilation Earth Seal, almost instantly exhausted all of his essence energy. But he didn't care. He walked over, wanting to confirm whether Tang Yuyu was dead or alive. Is he dead? Tang 13 followed closely with a face of astonishment. Nie Tian's strength was too strong, far exceeding her imagination. Nie Tian looked at the little mountain in front of him and shook his head slightly. He wasn't sure whether Tang Yuyu was still alive or not. Bam! At this moment, a crack suddenly appeared on the little mountain. A figure flew out from it and leaped dozens of meters into the air. It was Tang Yuyu. Tang Yuyu escaped from death. Her black robe was torn and her face was covered in dust. She looked very embarrassed. Behind her, the 9 pairs of black wings slightly trembled, keeping her in the air. A strange creature that looked like a crow but had 4 dragon claws floated behind her. 9-winged dragon crow. Nie Tian was shocked when he saw Tang Yuyu's original spirit. So Tang Yuyu's original spirit was a 9-winged dragon crow. No wonder she could escape from Nie Tian's Annihilation Earth Seal. The 9-winged dragon crow was a rank 7 original spirit. Even though Tang Yuyu borrowed the power of her original spirit to escape death, she was clearly injured. Blood was forced out of the corner of her mouth. Her body was like a leaf in the wind, on the verge of collapse. Nie Tian. Tang Yuyu looked at Nie Tian with endless anger and shock in her eyes. She said, "I will remember you. We will meet again." Finishing, the black wings on Tang Yuyu's back flapped. Like a stream of light, she disappeared in the blink of an eye. Nie Tian didn't chase because he couldn't catch up. The biggest advantage of a bird's original spirit was the ability to fly. This was an ability that other original spirit martial artists couldn't compare to. For other martial artists to fly in the air, they had at least reach the true element realm or cultivate a flying martial skill. Chapter 109. Forcefully borrowing the power of heaven and earth to use the Annihilation Earth Seal, Nie Tian was currently extremely weak. Beside Nie Tian, Tang 13 stared at the direction where Tang Yuyu disappeared, dumbfounded for a moment. At the moment when Tang Yuyu broke through the ground, Tang 13 discovered that her heart pendant had lit up. Heart pendant. Both pendants were of the same heart. Now that the heart pendant had lit up, it could only mean one thing. I met another pendant. Could she be? Tang 13's expression turned sluggish as she mumbled to herself. Tang 13, what's wrong? Seeing the strange expression on Tang 13's face, Nie Tian asked. Nie Tian, I still have something to do. I'll take my leave first. Tang 13 reacted and didn't bother explaining anything to Nie Tian. She immediately sprinted towards the direction where Tang Yuyu disappeared. Looking at Tang 13's figure, Nie Tian was slightly startled as he mumbled, "Could it be that Tang 13 knows this assassin?" It wasn't that Nie Tian suspected Tang 13, but he subconsciously felt that she and Tang Yuyu should have a deep relationship. 9-winged dragon crow Yuan Ling. This female assassin's talent is not below MOU's. I have to be more careful in the future. Nie Tian mumbled to himself. Being stared at by a top-notch assassin like Tang Yuyu was definitely not a good thing. However, Nie Tian naturally wasn't afraid. As long as he had the time, he would immediately inscribe an astral soul. At that time, with an astral soul, he would have many ways to protect his life. He wouldn't have to use the 3 seals of the war god again. The current Nie Tian was still too weak. Although using the Annihilation Earth Seal wouldn't injure him, it would exhaust all of his elemental energy. If Tang Yuyu had other helpers, it would be very difficult for him to escape. Nie Tian didn't waste any more time. He simply dealt with the corpses of the Zhu Wan and Zhu Qian brothers and looted their belongings. These 2 brothers definitely wouldn't have dreamt that they would suffer such an undeserved calamity just because they were a temporary bodyguard. The Zhu clan brothers had quite a few good items on them. They were accumulated in the black market for many years. This time, it was Nie Tian's turn. Nie Tian took care of everything and left immediately. Inside the Danhart Pavilion, Gui looked at Nie Tian's back from afar with a lifeless expression. He had seen everything that had happened just now. Originally, he thought that Nie Tian was just a young master of a big family, relying on the rich resources of his family, so he had some knowledge. Now that he saw the battle between Nie Tian and Tang Yuyu, Gui knew that Nie Tian was absolutely a martial arts genius. He was simply a monstrous existence. Just as Nie Tian left, Qiushan and the others had just left the black market. Walking out of the black market, Qiushan finally heaved a sigh of relief. Everyone was panting heavily from exhaustion. Uncle Qiushan, will big brother Nie Tian be all right? Nie Yuro asked Qiushan with a worried expression. Miss Yuro, don't worry. Mr. Nie will definitely be fine. Qiushan comforted Nie Yuro. Although he said that, Qiushan was very worried about Nie Tian. Just now, he had already felt the power of the hidden assassins. Even if it was Nie Tian, it would be difficult for him to escape. Teacher, you must be all right. Zhang Yifeng had a complicated expression, cold sweat dripping down his face. If something happened to Nie Tian, then Lan Bingxuan's life would also be in danger. Uncle Qiu Shan, why don't we go back and take a look? Jean de Bao was the most impatient and turned to leave. Qiu Shan pulled Jean de Bao back and said, Young Master Jean, Mr. Nie asked us to leave so that we won't be a burden to him. If he is all right, he will definitely come and find us. If something happens to him, even if we go back, it will be useless. Jean de Bao, just stay here and don't cause any more trouble. Qiu Ling was also very anxious and scolded. At this moment, a gloomy voice suddenly sounded. Rather than worrying about others, why don't you worry about yourselves? The voice was low and emitted a gloomy aura, like a demon that had walked out of the abyss. As the voice fell, more than 10 black figures appeared. The person who spoke was the leader of the group. Who is it? Qiu Shan subconsciously looked over and his heart jumped to his throat. Qiu Shan couldn't see through the strength of the dozen or so men in black in front of him. Especially the leader of the group, his aura was especially strong and he emitted a strong killing intent. Who is it? The leader of the group chuckled and said coldly, The people who want your lives. Attack! The leader of the group growled, and the dozen or so subordinates behind him all stepped forward. How dare you? How dare you injure people in Wu City? Do you know who I am? Zhang Yifeng took a step forward and shouted angrily. After leaving the black market, they were already in Wu City. Logically speaking, Wu City was an important place in the Imperial City and should be guarded by the Imperial Guards. Why did so many black-clothed people suddenly appear? The group of black-clothed people seemed to recognize Zhang Yifeng and were very afraid of him. They were stunned and actually subconsciously retreated. The leader of the black-clothed people laughed and said, Don't hurt this person. Take the little girl away. Nie Yuro. The target of these black-clothed people was Nie Yuro. Don't even think about it. Zhang Yifeng remembered Nie Tian's warning and immediately stood in front of Nie Yuro. Nie Yuro was Nie Tian's sister and was very important to Nie Tian. Even if Zhang Yifeng died, he would not take a step back. Master Zhang, we are only following orders. Why do you have to do this? The leader of the black-clothed people smiled coldly and raised his arm. A thorny vine shot out and directly hit Zhang Yifeng. Pung! Zhang Yifeng was hit in the chest and flew back a few meters. When he landed, he immediately fainted. The black-clothed people obviously didn't dare to kill Zhang Yifeng and only knocked him out. Zhang Yifeng was a third-rank alchemist and had a high status in the Blue Cloud Empire. Most importantly, he was a member of the Alchemist Guild. If a Tier 3 alchemist died for no apparent reason, the Alchemist Association would definitely not take it lying down. Who knows, it might even alarm the Alchemist Association to the next level, and by then, the entire Blue Cloud Empire would be implicated. Master Zhang, Jean de Bao shouted, but Zhang Yifeng didn't respond. Linger, take Miss Yuro away. Seeing that the situation was not good, Qiu Shan shouted and stood in front of Nie Yuro. The leader of the black-clothed people looked at Qiu Shan coldly. His eyes were filled with a cold, murderous intent. He spat out a few words, mere ant die. Pooh! In the next moment, the leader of the black-clothed people attacked. The thorny vine pierced through Qiu Shan's chest, and blood immediately flowed out. Although Qiu Shan was at the first tier of the All Creations realm, his Yuan meridians were injured and he couldn't unleash his true strength. In front of the black-clothed people, Qiu Shan couldn't resist at all. Uncle Qiu Shan. Seeing that Qiu Shan was injured, Qiu Ling shouted and went forward to support him. Uncle Qiu Shan. Nie Yuro was still young. She was so scared that she cried and held Qiu Ling-er's hand tightly. Chapter 110. You're courting death. Facing Jean de Bao's attack, the leader of the men in black didn't even look at it. Bang! With a muffled sound, Jean de Bao rolled like a rubber ball. After landing on the ground, he was actually unharmed. Oh! The leader of the men in black came to his senses and chuckled. I almost forgot that you're wearing the Golden Thunder Armor. The Golden Thunder Armor was the 4th grade armor that Jean de Bao won from the Qin family. It was strong enough to defend against the attacks of a giant soul realm martial artist. Thinking of the golden thunder armor, the leader of the men in black suddenly became irritable. His black robe fluttered in the wind, and the space around him began to twist. His terrifying anger spread. Jean DeBeo, a piece of trash like you doesn't deserve to wear the golden thunder armor. Take it off. With a shrill cry, the leader of the men in black unleashed a terrifying aura. Jean DeBeo felt an invisible force pressing down on his body. Drenched in sweat, he collapsed to the ground in a few seconds, unconscious. The leader of the men in black stretched out his hand, and an invisible force tore the golden thunder armor off Jean DeBeo's body. Several cuts appeared on Jean DeBeo's body, and blood flowed all over his body. Jean DeBeo, Ling, was young and had never experienced such a situation. She also burst into tears. You big jerk! If you dare to hurt us, Big Brother Nyetian will not let you go. Nyeyuro suddenly displayed a bravery that didn't match her age. She stepped forward and shouted. The leader of the men in black was not scared by Nyeyuro. Instead, he chuckled. Little girl, I'm afraid that your Big Brother Nyetian is already a corpse. You're lying. Big Brother Nyetian is invincible. He will not die. Nyeyuro shouted, but tears flowed down her cheeks. The leader of the men in black did not want to waste any more time. He said coldly, Take her away. Yes. A dozen of his men replied in unison. One of the men in black reacted quickly and attacked Nyeyuro with his spiritual snake sword. Ling reacted and struck out with her spirit snake illusory sword. Sword chi gushed out, but the man in black was much stronger than her. With a wave of his hand, all her sword attacks were shattered. Ling screamed and fell to the ground. She fainted again. Big Sister Ling Nyeyuro was so scared that she started crying. She wanted to run over, but she was stopped by another black-clothed man. Brother Nyetian, where are you? Hurry up and save Ro, Nyeyuro cried as she tried to help. The small fist swung out, but it was only halfway through before it was bounced back by the black-clothed man's firm and fierce aura, causing it to fall to the ground. Little sister, come with us obediently. The black-robed man chuckled, reaching out to lift Nyeyuro up. Yeah. At that moment, a strange cry was heard. A black and white figure suddenly dashed out and bit the black-clothed man's wrist. Ka! With a crisp sound, the black-clothed man's wrist was bitten off. Crack! 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 In the next moment, a strange scene appeared. A layer of ice crystals formed on the black-clothed man's body, and he was actually directly frozen. What's that? The others looked at the chubby little bear that suddenly appeared and exclaimed in unison. Xiao Guai. When Nyeyuro saw that it was Xiao Guai, she shouted out in surprise. Xiao Guai leaped onto Nyeyuro's shoulder and rubbed its chubby head against Nyeyuro's neck, seemingly comforting the latter. Little bastard, I will kill you. The leader of the black-clothed men didn't want to waste any more time, and he personally made a move. Vines formed into a ghost claw and grabbed towards Xiao Guai. The little Pishio waved its furry claw, and layers of ice crystals formed in the air, protecting it and Nyeyuro in the center. Bang! The vines crashed onto the ice crystal barrier, and with a loud bang, the ice crystal barrier immediately shattered. The little Pishio was, after all, too small. Even though it had terrifying talent, it was still too weak. Roar! The ice crystal barrier shattered, and Xiao Guai let out a miserable cry. Its body tilted and fell into Nyeyuro's arms. Xiao Guai! Nyeyuro cried out in fear, and in the next moment, she also fainted onto the ground. The leader of the black-clothed men didn't hesitate, and he immediately took out a sack, placed Nyeyuro into the sack, and threw it to one of his subordinates. Leader, what should we do with these people? One of the black-clothed men asked. Wu Sen stays. Except for Zhang Yifeng, kill everyone else. Don't leave any corpses. The leader of the black-clothed men said, and turned around to leave. Yes. The black-clothed man, named Wu Sen, glanced at the unconscious Ling and laughed. In the blink of an eye, all the black-clothed men had left, and only Wu San was left behind. Little beauty, you're going to die anyway. Let me have a good time before you die. Wu San laughed, and his saliva almost flowed out. Wu San took a few steps forward and directly toward Xiao Ling Er's clothes, immediately revealing a large piece of white skin and the graceful figure of a young girl, faintly discernible. Immediately, Wu San felt the evil fire in his heart, and it was difficult to suppress it. At this moment, a figure suddenly sprang up from behind and suddenly hugged Wu San, and a dagger slashed across Wu San's neck. Wu San felt a chill on his neck, and he felt a warm, sticky liquid spurting out. Subconsciously, he covered his neck, but could not stop the blood from spurting out. Die. Piece of sh*t. Jean de Bayo directly pushed Wu San to the ground. After the latter fell to the ground, he twitched a few times and then stopped moving. Although Jean de Bayo had fainted just now, his demon and God's blood scroll spirit was very miraculous, and it allowed him to quickly recover. In just a few moments, the bloody wounds on his body had faded a lot. In any case, Wu San was an all-creations martial artist, and yet he was so easily killed by Jean de Bayo. He could only blame himself for letting his guard down. Jean de Bayo took off the only shirt he had on and draped it over Xiao Ling and then he woke her up. When Xiao Ling woke up, she saw Wu San's corpse and then looked at her own clothes. She immediately understood what had happened and immediately burst into tears. Ling you didn't do anything. I killed him. Jean de Bayo did not know what to say and could only stiffly comfort her. De Bayo, Xiao Ling threw herself into Jean de Bayo's arms and cried even more sadly. After a while, Xiao Ling finally stopped crying and wiped away her tears. Her emotions were much calmer now. The two of them looked at each other, but did not know what to do next. Nie Yuro had been taken away. If Nie Tian found out about this, it would be disastrous. At this moment, a figure running wildly appeared in the distance. Nie Tian was still 100 meters away, but he had already sensed that something was wrong. With a loud roar, he rushed forward and arrived in the blink of an eye. What happened? Seeing Zhang Yifeng and Qiu Shan unconscious on the ground, and Nie Yuro nowhere to be seen, Nie Tian's heart sank, and he roared angrily. Jean de Bayo briefly explained what had happened. After hearing this, Nie Tian's body stiffened, and he instantly felt his blood flow backward. His eyes were bloodshot, and he could only inhale but not exhale. His entire person was like a volcano that had suddenly boiled and was about to explode. Anger, monstrous anger. You must find Yuro. After a while, Nie Tian roared angrily, and his entire body released a terrifying murderous intent. Chapter 111. Nie Yuro was Nie Tian's most important family member in this life. He would not allow anything to happen to her. Boss, what do we do now? Jean de Bayo asked anxiously. Nie Tian did not speak. He walked to Qiu Shan's side and fed him a blood yuan pill. At this time, Zhang Yifeng also slowly woke up. Seeing that Nie Tian had returned, Zhang Yifeng knelt down with a thud and said sorrowfully, Teacher, this disciple is useless and could not protect Miss Yuro. This disciple is willing to die as an apology. No one will die, Nie Tian said solemnly and motioned for Zhang Yifeng to stand up. Now that things had come to this, Nie Tian didn't want to blame anyone. The most important thing now was to find the men in black and rescue Nie Yuro. Teacher, these people know me, so they must be from the Blue Cloud Empire, and they don't look like people from the Bloodbath sect. Zhang Yifeng thought for a moment and reminded. Yes, Jean de Bayo added. The leader of the men in black also knows me, and he even stole my golden thunder battle armor. They must be from the Qin family. I will ask my father to find the Qin family. Nie Tian nodded slightly, already having a guess in his heart. Nie Tian believed that the people who kidnapped Nie Yuro must be Lan Binji's subordinates. Although he had only met Lan Binji a few times, Nie Tian could tell at a glance that the latter was a vengeful and merciless person. Nie Tian even guessed that Tang Yuyu was sent by Lan Binji to kill him. Lan Binji, I will definitely make you pay. Nie Tian's face was gloomy as he growled in his heart. Yifeng, I want to see the Emperor of Blue Cloud Empire, Nye Tian said decisively. At this time, even if Nye Tian concluded that Lan Binji was behind this, he could not directly fight the latter to the death. And with Lan Binji's temperament, if Nye Tian pushed him too far, he would definitely destroy Nye Yuro's corpse. At the end of the day, Nye Tian's current strength was too weak. It was impossible for him to fight against the entire kingdom of Blue Cloud alone. Teacher, His Majesty the Emperor is of noble status. It's not that easy to meet him. Zhang Yifeng's expression was troubled. Nye Tian thought for a moment and said, let's go see Lan Bingshan first. Since he couldn't see the Emperor, Nye Tian could only take a step back and see Lan Bingshan. Without further ado, they quickly left Wu City. Nye Tian asked Jean de Bayo to bring Qiu Shan and Qiu Linger back first, while he and Zhang Yifeng went to the Crown Prince's residence together. A moment later, in the Crown Prince's residence. Lan Bingshan, I'll give you a chance. Take me to the Emperor. Go now. Nye Tian didn't want to talk nonsense with Lan Bingshan and said directly, almost in a commanding tone, Mr. Nye, what's going on? Imperial Father is very busy. I'm afraid he won't see you easily. Lan Bingshan put on a tactful attitude. Clearly, he was still holding a grudge against Nye Tian for refusing to treat Lan Bingshan. Your Highness, my teacher's sister has been kidnapped. I hope you can take my teacher to His Majesty the Emperor. Zhang Yifeng said. Nye Tianling looked at Lan Bingshan coldly and said, I'll only give you one chance. Just tell me if you can or can't. Lan Bingshan didn't expect Nye Tian to be so overbearing in this situation. His forehead immediately broke out in cold sweat. It was only for a short moment, but Lan Bingshan saw the determination in Nye Tian's eyes. He suddenly felt a shiver from the depths of his soul. All right, I'll take Mr. Nye to see Imperial Father right now. Lan Bingshan agreed without much hesitation. He didn't dare to refuse Nye Tian. He didn't even dare to negotiate with Nye Tian. The three of them didn't waste any time and left the Crown Prince's residence for the Imperial Palace. Just as Nye Tian and the others left the Crown Prince's residence, at the same time, in the Qin residence. In the meeting hall, Lan Binji sat on the main seat. In front of him stood two people. One was Qin Yetian, the other was a young man dressed in black. Cousin, you did well. I'll definitely reward you later. Lan Binji smiled proudly. His smile was very happy and brilliant. Thank you, Your Highness. The young man in black bowed and replied. This man in black was none other than the leader of the men in black who had kidnapped Nye Yuro. Although his voice had changed, his figure and aura couldn't be changed. He was called Qin Yulong, the eldest son of Qin Yetian. At the same time, he was the elder brother of Qin Yuhu and Qin Yulong. Qin Yetian was the commander of the Imperial Guards. Qin Yulong was the captain of one of the 8 Imperial Guards. The men who had attacked Nye Yuro were Qin Yulong and his men. They were under Lan Binji's orders. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to openly kidnap people in Wu City. Lan Binji had promised Qin Yulong that as long as he became the emperor, Qin Yulong would be the next commander of the Imperial Guards. Qin Yetian looked at the complacent Lan Binji. However, a hint of worry appeared on his face. He bowed and said, Your Highness, Nye Tian's identity is extraordinary. Although he doesn't have a high status, he is Zhang Yifeng's teacher. Moreover, he has a close relationship with Qi Feng from Tyrant Cloud Academy. In addition, he is Tyrant Cloud's rookie king. Even Principal Wakaba thinks highly of him. If he finds out about this, I'm afraid he won't rest until he's dead. Lan Binji took a sip of tea and laughed wildly. He said, Uncle, you don't have to worry. If this prince's guess is correct, Nye Tian is already a corpse. Lan Binji knew that Nye Tian and the others had gone to the black market. Therefore, he concluded that Nye Tian was already dead. Tang Yuyu was a top-notch assassin. He definitely wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. Moreover, if Tang Yuyu made a move again, you wouldn't have to worry too much in the black market. There was absolutely no possibility of him failing. What a pity. Lan Binji suddenly smiled regretfully. He said, Nye Tian died too early. He couldn't see his younger sister's tragic end. This prince will not only make his younger sister's life a living hell, but I will also make his family pay the price. I want everyone in the world to know that those who offend me, Lan Binji, will definitely not have a good ending. Your Highness is wise. Qin Yetian looked at Lan Binji. His heart inexplicably trembled. He found it hard to believe that the person in front of him was actually a 14-year-old youth. Your Highness, how should we deal with that little girl? Qin Yetian bowed and asked. He now knew that Lan Binji was someone he couldn't afford to offend. Lan Binji yawned lazily and laughed. He said, I heard that third cousin has some unusual hobbies. Let third cousin play with that little girl for a few days. If third cousin gets tired of playing with her, just sell her. The third cousin that Lan Binji mentioned was Qin Yulong. Qin Yulong was indeed a 100% pervert in the past. Unfortunately, he had already been castrated by Nie Tian. Yes, I thank your Highness on behalf of Yulong. When Qin Yetian heard Lan Binji speak of Qin Yulong in such a manner, he felt very upset. However, he could only nod and express his thanks. All right, this prince will be leaving. Lan Binji waved his hand casually. He slowly stood up and left. When he reached the entrance of the hall, Lan Binji suddenly turned around and said with a serious expression, Commander Qin, this prince has never appeared here today. Do you understand? Qin Yetian was stunned for a moment. He immediately reacted. Lan Binji wanted to distance himself from this matter. This subordinate understands. Although he knew what Lan Binji meant, Qin Yetian could only nod solemnly. Chapter 112. Nie Tian and Zhang Yifeng followed Lan Bingchen and rushed to the Imperial Palace. The Imperial Palace was the most heavily guarded place in Blue Cloud City, the center of the highest power in the Blue Cloud Empire. Outside the palace gate, a row of armored warriors stood motionless with their heads held high. Each of them was at least in the 5th tier of the All Creations realm. Lan Bingchen walked in front. The warriors saluted and opened the palace gate. After walking into the palace, Nie Tian couldn't help but smile bitterly. If Lan Bingchen hadn't led the way today, he wouldn't even have been able to enter the palace gate. The defense of the palace was extremely tight. In addition to the palace guards on the surface, there were countless secret guards protecting the palace day and night. However, such guards were only used to guard against ordinary warriors. If they encountered a true energy realm or even a spirit wheel realm expert, the defense of the palace would be useless to them. With Lan Bingchen leading the way, Nie Tian and the others had a smooth journey and soon arrived at the Zhengde Hall of the palace. A figure flashed out of the Zhengde Hall. It was none other than Xiao Luyang. Master Xiao, Lan Bingchen and Zhang Yifeng greeted him at the same time and bowed slightly. Xiao Luyang walked over and cast a sideways glance at Nie Tian, his face full of impatience. Master Xiao, is father here? Mr. Nie wants to see father, Lan Bingchen said respectfully. Xiao Luyang looked at Nie Tian playfully and joked, You want to see his majesty? Yes. Nie Tian didn't want to talk nonsense and nodded slightly. Xiao Luyang sneered and said indifferently, His Majesty has just fallen asleep and won't see anyone. Please go back. Obviously, Xiao Luyang was still brooding over what happened before. Now that he had a chance to ridicule Nie Tian, he certainly wouldn't let it go. Nie Tian really didn't have time to argue with Xiao Luyang. After thinking for a moment, he said, The black spots on the princess body are concentrated in the lower abdomen. The black spots are sunken, and there is a blood spot in the center that has begun to fester. The strange words made Xiao Luyang's whole body shake, as if he had been electrocuted. How did you know? Xiao Luyang froze for a moment, bean-sized beads of sweat dripping from his forehead, and suddenly shouted. The princess's current condition was exactly the same as what Nie Tian had described. However, only Xiao Luyang knew about it. Even the emperor didn't know about it. So how could Nie Tian know it so clearly? If the princess is not treated within an hour, she will definitely die. If you don't want the princess to die, then get the hell out of my way, Nie Tian said in a low voice. His extremely cold eyes revealed a strong sense of confidence. Get lost. As soon as Nie Tian's voice fell, the scene fell into a dead silence. It was hard to imagine that Nie Tian would actually reprimand Xiao Luyang in front of him. In fact, Nie Tian was just spouting nonsense from his heart. He was only speculating about Lan Bingxuan's current situation based on her 10,000 poison body's characteristics. In fact, the poison spots on Lan Bingxuan's body weren't fatal. On the contrary, they were beneficial to her body. Once the poison spots were expelled, Lan Bingxian would be fine. However, only Nie Tian knew about this. Xiao Luyang didn't know about it. Xiao Luyang gritted his teeth. He didn't expect that he would be reprimanded by a teenager in front of him. Nie Tian ignored Xiao Luyang's anger and said in a cold voice, "Your face is for me to slap. You can continue to be angry if you really don't care about the princess's life or death." Xiao Luyang's eyes viciously stared at Nie Tian. His whole body trembled violently. As the president of the Alchemist Guild, Xiao Luyang's status was very high. Usually, even the emperor would treat him as an equal and even give him some courtesy. But now, he was reprimanded by a teenager in front of him. He couldn't swallow this anger. But what could he do even if he couldn't swallow it? Nie Tian had already grasped Xiao Luyang's vital point. He could only obediently give in. Relying on his remaining reason, Xiao Luyang forced himself to calm down and said, "I'll take you to see His Majesty the Emperor." After that, Xiao Luyang flicked his sleeves and turned around, walking towards the righteous Virtue Hall. Nie Tian heaved a long sigh of relief. If Xiao Luyang continued to be in a stalemate with him, he really didn't know what to do. A moment later, Nie Tian and the other two walked into the righteous Virtue Hall. In the hall, on a spacious dragon bed, a burly middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s was lying down. His temperament was languid and his mood was low, giving people a feeling of a dying tree. Nie Tian knew that this middle-aged man was the emperor of the Blue Cloud Empire, the real ruler of the Blue Cloud Empire. This child greets imperial father. Lan Bingxian bowed deeply and respectfully. Dispense with the formalities. Lan Yunhai slightly waved his hand and said a few words in a very low voice. Xiao Luyang, who was sitting next to Lan Yunhai, whispered a few words to him. Lan Yunhai slowly stood up and looked at Nie Tian with listless eyes. He reluctantly squeezed out a smile and said, "You are Master Zhang's teacher, Mr. Nie Tian?" Although Lan Yunhai hadn't seen Nie Tian before, he had heard of his name. Zhang Yifeng's teacher, the newcomer king of Tyrant Cloud Academy, defeated Lan Binji and even fought against Qin Yetian. These things were enough for Lan Yunhai to pay attention to the young man in front of him. And Nie Tian nodded and said directly, "I can save the princess, but your majesty must save my sister first." "Mr. Nie," Lan Yunhai suddenly raised his voice. His originally weak body suddenly exploded with a tyrannical aura, pressing down on Nie Tian. At the same time, he said in a loud voice, "Are you negotiating with me?" Nie Tian didn't fear Lan Yunhai's pressure at all. He straightened his chest, and his eyes became more resolute. He said coldly, "I am negotiating with you, and you must agree to my conditions." As soon as he finished speaking, the entire hall fell into a deathly silence, to the point that even a pin drop could be heard. Lan Yunhai's expression stiffened. He looked at Nie Tian from afar, and his heart skipped a beat. This young man's eyes are so scary. He doesn't show any fear in front of my pressure. Nie Tian made Lan Yunhai think of a phrase, hidden dragon. The hidden dragon rises from the abyss with the power to break the heavens. This was how Lan Yunhai felt about Nie Tian. However, Lan Yunhai was the ruler of a country after all. He quickly returned to normal and said coldly, "What if I don't agree to your conditions?" Nie Tian's pupils shrank, and his eyes released undisguised anger. He said coldly, "If you reject me, the kingdom of blue clouds will be destroyed." Zhang Yifeng and Lan Bingxian were completely stunned by his words. What arrogance! Presumptuous, arrogant, boundless, crazy enough to make one's hair stand on end. The scene was dead silent. It was as if time had stopped, and the atmosphere was so oppressive that it was suffocating. What an arrogant young man! After a long while, Xiao Liang pointed at Nie Tian and roared angrily, "How dare you say such treasonous words? You're courting death." Nie Tianling looked at Xiao Luyang coldly and ignored him. He stared at Lan Yunhai and said word by word, My conditions, do you agree to them or not? Nye Tian was not joking. If something really happened to Nye Yuro, he would bury the entire royal family of Blue Clouds. The fate of the royal family of Blue Clouds was in Lan Yunhai's hands. If he chose correctly, he would live. If he chose wrongly, he would fall into a bottomless abyss. Lan Yunhai stared at Nye Tian with his eagle-like eyes. He wanted to know what made this young man so fearless.